Good evening, everyone. We've got a informal workshop tonight. Doug, would you introduce our speaker?
Dr. Fersman is here with us again to lead us in the search process.
Good evening. For the record, this is March 12th, 2018, 5:30, a workshop with Dr. Fersman. Dr. Fersman, please go ahead.
Thank you. And do you need me mic or anything?
Yeah. So that people can hear at home, if you would, please.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Doug. Are they still liking you, Doug? Or are you?
Depends on what you say.
He can be a problem sometimes. So,
For the record, your name and company, please.
name of the company is Hugh Life. We're here tonight to talk a little bit about the process of search and language that we'd be using in the profile. And so let's talk a little bit about, I put together a little bit of an agenda just to keep our ideas focused on what we need to accomplish tonight, because I know we have a short window here, so we'll want to get right into it. You see in front of you a report. This is really a encapsulation of the meeting when I was here last. And you can see there are 3 pages. First page was expectations coming into that meeting, and those expectations were: how can we attract a great candidate? How can we work together towards common good? How can we ensure fair and equal treatment in this process? What are the expectations of a city manager? How do we best sell ourselves as a city and as a council? Teamwork, maintain that. ID, what we agree on. And how do we keep the ball from dropping? How do we keep excellence in our community? So we posed a question. And that question was to provide the best possible, most effectively delivered services the City of Victoria needs to, city being us. We need to be committed to knowing and serving the community, achieving accountability through consistent, repeatable processes and best practices, have efficient, effective, adaptable staff that works together and relies on one another, or, put another way, collaborating as a team, demonstrate a leadership philosophy that is empowering, courageous, engaging, fair, and trustworthy, or a team that is a team whose sum is greater than its parts. And finally, think and act strategically for the betterment of the community. And if we did these things collectively as a group, that this would be an awesome group to work for and work with as a team here in the city. We understood that. We also did a bit of an exercise at introducing ourselves and as to explore values. And these values were brought forward in some of the language that I was using in the profile, or beginnings of a profile. So 3 questions were asked of each other, and the responses collected showed that the images and sense of place we hold for Victoria are: it should be a family atmosphere, walkable, safe environment, freedom to move out and about, an attractive place to be outside, feeling of being home when you're here, tied into nature, a small town feel where you can be carefree and enjoy your friends. Those kind of the communities that we grew up in, we'd like to see reflected. How do we want to feel when we're at work in this organization? We want to feel recharged, a sense of fun, getting energy from the people around us, escape and a sense of freedom to do our work, learning, relaxed, peaceful, de-stressed, yet competitive, with a sense of accomplishment, and getting better at something all the time. We could do that at work. It would be a great place to work. And how about leadership? Our leadership is organized. It's straight up. shows perseverance, ability to reach across the aisle. We're artistic, intelligent, and visionary, motivating people to see the big picture, and we stretch ourselves to do more than maybe we would be able to do currently. So that's a short recap. We had a bit of a discussion then, where are we at that time? And that's, there's a lot of pain still there about where we're at, and that continues to show up. And I put that in a reflection in some of the language, and I'll move to that language now. It's on City of Victoria profile components. In order to move into a search, I think it's important to lay out in front of candidates the environment that they're going to come into. And so I was pretty blunt, if you will, painting both the hard and the optimistic sides of this. So under current organization culture, I wrote to potential candidates, the city has experienced a rapid depleting of senior staff in 2018. The city manager, community development director, senior planner, and a senior planning commission member have left. There's a high level of acrimony involving a split in the council that has drained energy from the group and created a difficult working environment for staff. Differences of opinion on a lingering court case brought against members of the council by other members continues to create decorum breakdowns, resulting in a bitterness and a toxic environment that has left professional staff either leaving or feeling at a loss. It's kind of the situation as I saw it. Desired organization culture, which would be the paragraph that follows it. The council and staff met recently and described their ideal work environment to provide the best possible, most effective delivery of services to the citizens of Victoria. The entire group came to consensus around 5 areas of focus, and I just read those. They continue to be committed to knowing, serving the community, achieving accountability through consistent, repeatable processes and best practices, have efficient, effective, adaptable staff, collaborating as a team, demonstrate a leadership philosophy that is empowering, courageous, engaging, fair, and trustworthy, and a team that is whose sum is greater than its parts, and a team that thinks and acts strategically for the betterment of the community. Now, as far as desired leadership traits or characteristics of our community development director or the city manager, I would say for both, is that we're looking for leaders to help create a high-performing organization. The next community development director should be an intelligent visionary with the ability to motivate people and see the big picture. They should be well organized, yet seeing themselves stretching themselves to try new things beyond their current skill level. The person should be straight up, honest, with the ability to work with all council members without showing favoritism. They should be able to demonstrate perseverance and a can-do attitude. The other components that will be in the profile, following gathering some more information from you and staff, a little bit more about the city. These are demographic facts that we put together, population, how fast it's growing, those type of things. So somebody unfamiliar with the city would have a snapshot. That's what that's intended to do. Position responsibilities, major opportunities and position priorities. So in other words, what are they going to have on their front plate the first 6 months in the job? The required skills and experience that we're looking for, timetable with interview dates, the salary range, and how to apply. All those type of things are then included on the profile. So my question to you right now, and I think this idea has been floated by Doug. I've talked to Doug about this, and that is, given where we're at right now with planning staff, that it's of utmost importance to look at the community development director position and start on that right away. And so that's the charge in front of us. The second is, what do we do with a city manager search? And we'll handle that second. If we do a city manager search, when does it happen? Does it happen now, or does it happen after the election? And we wait for a new council to be seated. There are some benefits to that. A person applying for the job will know who. Well, let's say we started a city manager search right now. They would probably start 5 months from now if we started today. So you're looking at fall, or close to fall. It'd be the end of summer, August, September, by the time they would be able to start. 2 months later, you have an election. 4 months later, you have a new council seated. Candidates coming in would go, I'm going to interview with one group, and then I'm going to be working for a different one. And so that is one of the drawbacks about doing one right now. If it was a lockstep council, one that was feeling very confident about where it's going together, and also where it's kind of what the future of the organization, I would say you probably don't have any problem. This happens all the time. We always have elections, and the city manager and other staff who are appointed always have to face that, I'll say, opportunity to get to know a new group. So with that in mind, I would open it for any feedback or questions, comments on the council.
Thank you, Dr. Fursman. Council, who wants to go first? Go ahead.
I'll go first. My gut, I feel that probably waiting until the election is the most realistic and best thing to do. But it's so, I also find it difficult to believe that there can't be some productive searching going on between now and then, so that we are not standing still when the election results come in, so that we can keep moving and move quickly. The 5-month thing, you're the expert, but that's, to me, very daunting that it would take 5 months to find the city manager. On the other hand, I've never hired a city manager, so.
How long did it take us with Lori? Is it about that time frame?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor and council, the reason the 5 months, it doesn't take that long to actually go through the process. But let's say somebody that you hired was currently in a seated position. I always assume that the person you're hiring may have a job, and usually it's other administrators have a 4 to 6 week severance agreement with or a separation where they have to give notice. I'm not sure what Lori had. I think, did she have 30 days or something like that? But anyway, so add on to the process another month to a month and a half before they're able to start. It only takes about 3 to 3.5 months. It's just that time lag. Now, if they're not employed, they can start right away. Or if they're employed in a position that doesn't have that requirement. So,
Do you have a recommendation for us?
well, I would recommend that you postpone it, only because, in speaking with Doug, I know that Doug is willing to stay on. I hope that isn't news to them, Doug. Did it? Am I putting words in your mouth?
If it get to that point, I'd have some conditions.
Right. So my point is, if you're happy with Doug and his interim role, and you're comfortable with that, that would probably be the best route to take. I'm just saying, if I'm applying for a job, if any of you are applying for a job and you knew that a couple of the people up here that were hiring you are going to be gone within a couple months of your start, what if you were voted in or asked to join the city on a 3-2 vote?
So what are you suggesting? September, start the search for a permanent city manager? July, what time? Give me
I
a
would
month.
say you can have the framework pretty much done. I would say once you have identified who's going to be on your council, then you can actually advertise and start the position.
So you're talking about starting in November.
Yeah. So I,
Richard, couldn't we start advertising but not do the interview process until after November and then have both councils involved in the interview process and get me out of here in January?
He just wants to go someplace warm.
yeah. You know, here's. You can look up the history. Forest Lake, Minnesota, had a situation where they had a 5-member council, 2 were leaving. And I encouraged them, maybe you should postpone. They said, no, well, why don't we start now and we'll have the 5 and we'll have the 2 leaving and the 2 coming on in a room together. The 7 of us will decide. They had a 4-3 vote. 2 of the votes for the individual were 2 of the people leaving. The day the person started in January, they had a 2-3 council. 2 voted for him to start, 3 voted against. And so you can do that predicated on the idea that the 5 that would interview in November would be the 5 people that would be the boss of this individual, realizing that 2 don't have an ability to vote, but could inform the other 3 how they felt. Do you see what I'm saying? If you had all members voting plus 2, you are going to have a mess. Potentially. It might be a 7-0. We love Mr. Carbuncle very much, or whoever that might be. But if it's a split vote, what do we do with the candidates at that point? Do we have the 2 voted in picking the individual, or do we have the 2 who are leaving the council pick?
Well, since they're not sworn in, they couldn't vote. So,
Right, they would have to express their...
Right. So maybe what we would do is if it's not a unanimous vote of the then current council members, if it's a split vote, then we just wait until January and do a vote then. That avoids this scenario that you mentioned in Forest Lake.
I would say if you're going to do this, you could set it up so you can have interviews the first part of January.
And execute quickly. So Doug, this could be finished before the end of January.
Whether I'm available in February is one question, because you wouldn't get somebody on until then. I understand the problem, and I was actually hired that way in Brooklyn Park. It was right in that time of year, and they just all got together, but they were people that were much more congenial than this group might be. So I've seen it done, but his concern is valid. So I mean, if you could get the advertising done, do the interviews first week in January, get me out of here in the middle of February, I think it would be okay.
All right. Go ahead.
You want to hear the rest of my concerns, or before you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I would want you to agree to hire the community development director now. I would want you to agree to hire the city planner start that process. We would start that process so that we could hire the city planner about a month after the new community development director was here. So we have that filled. I would like a separation agreement for the finance director, giving her 6 months separation should she be fired within ever. Because I cannot work without a finance director. I don't want to lose that person. And I think if you give her that assurance that it would be reassuring and she wouldn't be out looking for a job. So I'm concerned that you would agree to that. I have plans in October and will be hard to find for a lot of October. That's it.
Council discussion? We can't vote on this. These kind of issues, I think, have to be brought up in a council meeting so we can vote on them. This workshop wasn't set up to handle
Absolutely.
that.
You can agree that that's the consensus we want to go at, and then we'll bring back what we need to, including hiring him to do the community development search, which we really haven't officially done.
It sounds like it's really not 6 months for the finance director. It sounds like it's more like 10 or 11 if we're talking about mid-February for your departure.
Well, it would be an agreement that should you, for some reason, end her employment with the city, that she would have a severance package for 6 months whenever that happens. So it would cost you nothing unless you fired her.
Understand.
Yeah.
But I think your goal is to ensure that there's continuity there through your time, right?
Right. I don't want any more key staff people looking for jobs if, with the anticipation of a new council coming in, maybe going in a new direction. And that's a key position for us.
I don't think this is a hard decision. I'm in favor of supporting the current city manager's request.
I think everything's reasonable. I would just like to take care of this instead of postponing a vote. I mean, how do we do this really quickly? I mean,
Well,
I don't want to drag this on.
do we have the ability to add this to tonight's agenda during the regular council meeting outside this workshop to vote on your proposal, Doug, and then but talk more directly about our plans for the city manager and the community development director now?
Yes, you could add something to tonight's
I
agenda.
think rules say
You have no rules.
so. So back to the matter at hand: the community development director and the city manager.
So let's take these one at a time. First, the hiring the community development director followed a month later or as soon as thereafter is reasonable to get the
City planner.
city planner. Is there a consensus on the council that we should begin with that? Councilmember Crowley? Would you support that?
Yeah, I guess my question here is going through them one by one. I heard this is a package deal, and he needs all of those. So it's either we support them all, or Doug isn't going to help us. And so I support them all.
Is it a package deal, Doug? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Councilmember Striegel?
Well, I guess my question, and I don't know if this is for Dr. Fersman or my fellow council members, is don't we have the same risk with a community development director that we do with a city manager? I mean,
Yeah,
the
Mr. Mayor,
common set of
Council.
elements that has brought this talent drain to this city hall.
Oh, I don't think, I'm not signing up for anything that's going to be easy to recruit for. You can hear, the current org's culture. I read that to you. I don't know that anybody would offer any edits, but maybe you would. And if you would and can say what you wrote here is incorrect, I'd be happy to change it. But it's going to be a tough recruitment. You're right. I can't guarantee, that's one of the things I put in my notes here for you, is I can't guarantee that this is going to work. I just can't, I can't fool you.
Clearly, and nobody would ask you to.
Because people are going to ask me, well, what happened? They're going to ask, we know Ben. Why did Ben leave? And well, you're going to have to call Ben, I'll say, and then they'll call Ben, and Ben will say whatever Ben has to say. I'm sure everybody who's left will be classy, and they will be kind to the city and to all of you. I know these people; they will do that. They're not going to throw anybody under the bus. At the same time, they'll have to be honest that that it was a tense situation for them. It's as it is reads here. And so is that an environment for them to come into and switch careers? You raise a great question, Tom.
I mean, having said that, I think without talking through what the challenges are, the intent is right on. I absolutely believe that we've got a lot of activity right now, and this is a absolute key position that we can't go a year without.
Now it is somewhat upside down.
But exactly, I mean, it was.
Usually the city manager would hire this position,
Right.
and you'd go through this process, and so the person is going to ultimately report to the city manager. So we're recruiting for a position where ultimately you're telling them,
Oh, they're going to report to the interim city manager.
right, for this
Right.
narrow time period, at which time you're going to get a new boss who you don't know who it is yet.
You can help recruit them and have them participate in that process.
Right. Which they would,
Which,
obviously.
of course, but it will still be a question mark in their head. I mean, they can participate in the process is not the same as knowing what the outcome is.
Right.
And in our professional lives, we all face similar
Yeah.
scenarios, right? There's no guarantees. Who's
No
in the chair
guarantees.
today will be in that chair tomorrow. And so that in and of itself isn't, I'm like I say, I think the idea is right on. We have to fill that spot, but I don't know. Maybe more importantly is what's any different to lose the next one and the next one and the next one.
I think we have to try. The business development community, the business community, I've heard from people, they're extremely worried about this, not having a development director, community development director to work with. It's one of the most common things I've heard is they're just very fearful what the future has in store for them. And so I think we have to try, and we may not succeed, or it may take much longer, but we should initiate the process because these people in today's world, you have to be flexible. That's how you survive. Flexibility and open-mindedness and so on. Patience. So the fact that this person would have, we could genuinely tell this person, we will listen to you when it comes to hiring your boss.
And I don't disagree with you, Councilmember Vogt, but I think this is a little bit of a, I guess what worries me for the business community and for the city in general is that if we lose another one, who's ever going to be strike three? Who's ever going to stand in line to be strike three?
Well, we've talked about the fact that, we have one of the best finance directors in the state. And, we had such good people here. So, when we lose them, it's big time.
Right, and if you lose 2 community development directors in a year, you may not get a third. Certainly not somebody of the caliber of a Ben or,
Mr.
I'm all in
Mayor,
favor of moving forward with a community development director, And I'm curious, how does the fact that we are a Plan B city weigh into this at all? I mean, because the council only has jurisdiction over the city manager. I mean, it's the city manager that
Right.
runs the city.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, oh, go ahead, Doug.
It's a valid point, Mr. Mayor. I do have the ability to hire a community development director. I would like to use him to do the recruiting process because I know he's just done some recently, and you used him the last time you hired a community development director. So theoretically, I could go ahead and hire somebody now under your charter, under the law, but I'd like to do it with your blessing. I think that you're such an attractive city for a community development director for what's going to happen here the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll have a pool of people that will depend on the council to hire somebody good in my chair, and that they'll look at it. And I would say, if Dr. Fersman and I tell you that you don't have that group, that we could just stop that process until we had to back off of it.
Because how I envisioned the process, because we are a Plan B city, is that you're asking the council for authorization to move forward with that hiring, the contract
Yes,
with Dr. Fersman.
yes.
We would have to vote and approve that, which would give you the authority to go hire. But what I'm hearing you say is that you're going to drive the process, and you're going to come back to us with, here's who I think we should go after.
Right.
Right, and that was my point, though. You know, we can't fire the finance director. We can't fire a community development. I'm sure they come in and they want, support of the council. That's certainly understood, but
And the same is true of the planner, too. But
certainly.
I'd like to make sure that we're all going the same direction.
And
That's
I'm
what I'm
not
trying.
disagreeing with that, but I'm just,
And we haven't fired anyone yet, but we've still got a whole lot of empty seats here.
well, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
For example.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we want to get into it, but
Well, I'm just
I
interested
mean-
because I think if we're going to try and overcome it, we should understand what it is we're trying to overcome.
well, certainly. I mean, we had a whole 2017 where we disagreed over legal fees. I mean, that was the core issue that separated us, that caused those issues. From my perspective, it was the city manager that made that call. The city manager had the ability to try to bring the council together, to try to somehow negotiate some kind of an agreement, some kind of a settlement, some kind of a compromise. We could have done that, and we could still do that. But there has been no compromise. The only compromise, the only thing that we have done so far is pay 100% of the fees. And what I'm asking is there compromise out there? And there hasn't been. So unless we're able to bring the council together with some sort of compromise, the issue will continue throughout 2018.
I guess I take an issue with that because in the council meeting where the three of us who are conflicted abstained,
I'm not
Councilman
conflicted.
Gregory, you specifically said that we had negotiated a not-to-exceed number with our attorney. And you said that if the Attorney General agreed that it was permissible and acceptable for the city to pay those legal fees, that you had no problem with it with the cap at the not-to-exceed number, but you failed to honor that when the decision came back. And so that's really kind of where that compromise fell apart.
No, that whole
What part
that
about
the
that's
day that you were
incorrect?
talking about was okay. We had a set a number not to exceed. That was true. There was 3 parts that we were being asked to approve. The part that made that whole thing fall apart was retroactively ratifying everything that Mayor Tom O'Connor and the council of 2016 did. That was the issue that blew up that whole agreement. That was that whole issue. So there was some agreement, but the Attorney General came back with a decision that none of us, as far as I'm concerned, disagreed with. The Attorney General stated that 13D06-4C was the applicable statute, which means that a council has the choice to pay or not to pay. And my point is, we've never negotiated anywhere in between. It has been one or the other, and there has been no negotiation. There's been no attempt to move the ball forward in any way, shape, or form. We have decided we're going to pay full steam ahead, regardless of, because Councilmember Vogt and I are tied up on this issue. The city manager has the authority to choose to pay or to choose not to pay. And we have never tried to negotiate anywhere between there.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to stop that. We're getting off track. Legal fees is not part of the workshop. If we want to discuss that, it needs to be done in a council meeting or noticed ahead of time. This came up as part of, this is what's underlying some of the staffing decisions, so let's get back to the staffing decisions. I'd like to emphasize the point that Councilmember Gregory made. This council doesn't fire the finance director or the others. That's the city manager's role. Am I not correct in that?
Absolutely.
So are you saying that you wouldn't support the interim city managers?
I want to get an answer here, please.
That's correct, although you could
So
direct the city manager to fire somebody, and if you didn't, you could fire the city manager and, I assume, get where you want to get.
Would a resolution stating that we support our finance director 100%, would that help?
I think we should just do this the severance package.
Well, we need to talk about that in open council.
Certainly.
Take a vote on that there.
Right, but I support everything that was in Doug's package. Tried to pursue something for the finance director, pursuing immediately hiring of the community development director, and within a month or two, pursue the city planner. And I think because of the fact that this is a class or a Plan B city, there will be some ability to hire this person.
So I'll support all but a 6-month severance package. I don't think a 6-month severance package is appropriate. That's the equivalent of 24 years of service.
Talking about that until we were in open council.
Well, we're talking about the package. He said it's all or none. So there's 3 council members that said they support the package. I'm saying I don't support the package because of that single provision. Councilmember Gregory, do you support the package as Doug mentioned it? If so, we can bring this up in the council meeting, add it to the agenda, and take a vote on it.
I support the package. I support the fact that I want to support our finance director. I think we have a wonderful finance director. However, I come back to the point that the council can't fire, and we're offering severance. I know we have difficulties up here. We have conflict on our council, and that, I mean, that's well known. But again, I've gotten along well with finance director. I got along well with our previous city manager, and I got along well with our community development director. The fact that there's conflict, it doesn't mean that we're going to fire the city manager and then go down the line and fire everybody else. That's just not the case.
All right, a quick question.
And one more point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're kind of going off track on these 6-month severance. If I heard right, the city of Chanhassen offers 1 week of severance for every year of service for their director heads, and we kind of jumped the gun there on our community development director, and they left anyway. So that didn't save our community development because we did give that 6-month severance.
City Attorney, since this is a regularly scheduled city council meeting later tonight, we could add this item to the agenda and then take it up there and proceed to a vote.
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that theoretically could be, that could happen.
All right. Do you see any issues with this in terms of the open meeting law because it wasn't noticed ahead of time?
Specifically with the way things have unfolded with the conversation, no.
Okay.
I don't see any glaring issues with that, no.
All right. Thank you.
Although I would always suggest this being something that was put on an agenda ahead of time. But at this point in time, I know there's no official, I guess, procedure for the council, so it could happen that way.
All right. Do you need a decision tonight, or can we give the public at least a couple of weeks' notice and put this on the council agenda for a vote, not tonight, but 2 weeks from tonight?
Well, it's not my schedule, it's yours, so I'm at here for your convenience, so.
All right. Doug, would you have any objections?
What's that? If we wait for 2 weeks?
Right, to give the public time so we can put it on the agenda and let people know?
Yes, if you're all going to be here on the 26th, I can put everything on the 26th.
Council, any objections to doing that?
None whatsoever.
Council?
No.
No?
Dr. Fersman, are you still interested in being a part of this process with the city?
Well, I want to help all of you. I mean, I have a lot of care and concern for this community. I've been part of this community for a decade. And if there's anything that I can do to help, I would like to do that. I just have to reflect on whether there is anything I can do to help. And so, you know, the healing has to start up here. It doesn't, I don't have a wand that I can bring out and do anything with. I think if I can be honest, and let me, if I may, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Gregory, you're absolutely correct in that under a Plan B, it's the city manager. And the only person that can get fired by the council is the city manager. We haven't had anybody fired. I don't think that is the concern in this case. The concern is the environment in which the individual is coming to work. You can work in an environment where you're guaranteed you can work here for as long as you want. And it's going to be stressful and miserable for you. Now, depending on who you talk to, it would depend on, you know, whether that would be the case or not. But when we're looking at attracting candidates, I don't know that they really are that concerned about whether or not they would survive. That's a low threshold for somebody to apply. If I apply there, I bet I could survive. People want to come here to thrive. They want to come here to do something meaningful with their career. Victoria certainly offers that. I think one just needs to look around, and you see the care and concern of the community, the involvement, and you know, you all ran for that reason.
I think you witnessed what we can do. The last time we met, it was scheduled for a meeting, for a 3-hour meeting from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock. We had a wonderful 3-hour session. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my colleagues decided to bring up the legal fee issue, which is the one issue that we don't agree on, the one issue. So from 9 o'clock till 9:40, we had strong disagreements. But from 6 to 9, we got along great. Once this legal fee issue gets resolved, and it will eventually, one way or another, I think we'll get along great.
I think that's the opening. Yeah, and I think that's why we're talking about the calendar and everything. That's why we delayed for a little bit. We said, well, maybe the horizon, maybe this question will be answered, and we can move on. Well, it ended up wasn't answered.
Guess what I'm hearing from our interim city manager is that there is a concern with the potential for another loss, and he's looking for a way to mitigate that risk, and he's offering us his expert opinion as how that risk might be mitigated, and I think we should listen to him.
I think it sends, if you do the recommendation, the severance contract, it sends a message to that employee that we're going to try to do our best to maintain sanity and allow you to thrive and to grow. Because that's in my head, that's what I'm thinking about, is we cannot continue an environment where the employees are sitting in that side of the building thinking about some of the strange things that are going to happen to the city. We say that, we can say there's only one dispute, but that's really at the core, it's not altogether true. There are fundamental philosophical differences too. So, it's incumbent on the city council to pull this thing together and to stop this business of, not being professional and be able to work together. I think the package is valid. Unless, Doug, you've rethought it while you were thinking.
I still think it's a reasonable approach. But on the finance director, I think it's the difference between another one of your department heads taking a job that maybe she wouldn't take if there wasn't pressure or concern of what happens after the election. She would have the comfort of knowing that no matter what happens, she's got a 6-month window to find another job, and she doesn't have to react to the first headhunter that walks in here. And I guarantee you that finance people are hard to find, and headhunters will be after somebody like her. So I'm just trying to create a more safer haven, even though theoretically you wouldn't be able to fire, but there would be ways that you could make it very uncomfortable. So that's all I'm looking for at this point. I think it'd be a good psychological and a good feeling for her to know that you support her in that manner.
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Vogt, just for some background on Doug's request, maybe to assuage some concern. I would take it that a 6-month severance would be so if someone was fired without cause, right. not if she suddenly became a crazed criminal and decided to rob all of you and rob the city coffers. You'd be able to fire her for those reasons. It is really a minor, very inexpensive insurance policy. I will tell you from experience in Maplewood, I had a 6-month severance, and I was fired in Maplewood by the council. And then they proceeded to put someone in who would do the rest of the work and fire other people. I was the cheapest fire they ever had in that whole ordeal. The assistant police chief got a $500,000 settlement. The HR director got a $250,000 settlement. I was peanuts compared to the firing of other people. A severance package, if you ever find yourself in a position where there's been some questions about the legality of any kind of firing, a severance package that allows you to fire for any reason actually is. I don't know why an employee would want that. They would be much better off suing you than they would settling for 6 months of pay. So I'm telling you, if you think that's expensive, and this is just my having negotiated a lot of severance packages, knowing that is the cheapest insurance a city could ever have in a situation like that. So with that, Mayor, direct answer to your question, yes, I'm at your disposal of the council if you decide to go ahead with the community development director. And it sounds like you're going to put that on a vote in 2 weeks. My condition is that I'd be completely transparent with the candidates. I kind of let them know what's going on. If you see any issues with the language that I put together, please let me know. I think I represented it clearly. I outlined that the differences are primarily about the issues with the court case. And to your point, I didn't mention that you couldn't operate otherwise. And so with that, I will leave it up to the council this evening.
All right, thank you.
Next week. Thank you. Pardon?
I don't have any concerns with your language.
Any other final comments?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll start the council meeting. Good evening, everyone. I call to order the March 12th, 2018 meeting of the Victoria City Council. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Doug, any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Council? Hearing none, I move we adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The agenda is adopted unanimously. Next item, open forum. Is there anybody that would like to address the council? Seeing none. Doug, do you have any slips? I don't have any here.
I do not.
Seeing none, let's move on. Consent agenda. Is there anybody that wants to pull anything off the consent agenda? One more time. Seeing nothing, I move we adopt the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That is adopted unanimously. Next item, visitors presentation. Chief Hegler? We all know you, but for the record, if you would, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrew Hager, Fire Chief of the city. So tonight I'm pleased to be here to present our 2017 annual report to you. What you'll see on the screen, kind of starting off, one of the big changes we made last year is the kind of the rebranding of the department. So the logo that you see on the bottom of that screen was developed by our staff last year. It features the city's original or first motorized fire truck, which is a 1929 Chevrolet. So incorporated in there. So kind of a big change to start off with going through. So we had what I would consider a successful year last year. I don't know how you measure success very well in our line of work, but one of the things that I will hit on is our mission statement, and that's on the bottom half of that screen. And I think as we go through this report, you're going to see those 5 bullet points that are outlined in our mission statement that we're hitting and achieving those goals that our group has set out. So just a brief introduction. Obviously, this organization doesn't function without our staff. That's the most critical portion of this. If we don't have staff to answer calls, train, all that kind of stuff, we don't operate. So that's the most important thing is our staffing model. Obviously, we operate on a paid-on-call model right now, and we want to continue to keep that model functioning as long as we can. Just on a 20-year trend, we're seeing like an 8% decrease nationwide in paid-on-call firefighters. So time constraints go up with the staffing. People are going to not be able to commit the necessary time to do this. So in 2016, like 98% of the departments in the state operated on some sort of paid-on-call or volunteer model. So
I'm sorry, what was that percentage again?
98.
Oh, thank you.
The big cities, obviously Minneapolis, St. Paul, Rochester, Duluth are all full-time, but everyone else is kind of some full-time staff mixed with paid-on-call and volunteers. So this came from a Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs study, and what they figured at that point, that saves the taxpayers in Minnesota $742 million a year. So this staffing model is obviously important to keep functioning as long as we can. So.
Chief Hager?
Yes.
Did that study distinguish at all in terms of growing cities versus stable or declining? In other words, as our population grows, do we expect to have the same challenges recruiting and retaining that broadly, that same statistic apply broadly to the state?
It did not differentiate between the two, so I would say no to that.
Do you have an opinion?
Staffing will continue to be an issue. It always is. I'll get to it a little bit later. We're sitting very well on our staffing numbers right now, but it's not something we can get complacent on and let it slip past. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Do most of your firefighters live in Victoria, or how does that?
Yes. So we have one person right now that lives outside of the city. They are a public works employee, and they are basically a daytime firefighter for us. So they're here Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30, and respond to calls during that time. So otherwise, everyone else resides within the city. So the next page, then you'll see our calls for service. So just showing you a 10-year history, we ended up with 259 calls for service last year. Out of those 259 calls, we logged just over 4,000 hours of staff time. So it kind of goes back to the staffing and the commitment that it takes to do this job. So another impressive thing that I think that comes out of that, the 4,000 hours, we had 0 injuries to our firefighters. So obviously the line of work we do is pretty dangerous and can be challenging. So to have 0 injuries is a pretty significant accomplishment for us. So this just kind of breaks down the calls per month. So 2017 was a little bit different. Normally our summer months tend to be a little bit busier, but 17 kind of fell off a little bit compared to 16. And that's a couple of things that can contribute to that is weather. The storms bring in, if there's a lot of storms, it can bring in a lot of calls for us. And then just people are out, more active, being outside. The incident type that you'll see here, every single call that we go on, a report gets generated for us. So 259 fire reports we filled out last year. When they fill out those reports, they have to classify the call into one of 8 categories, which you'll see listed on that graph. And then within the categories, they get broken down further. So the big one to hit on is there's 144 rescue and EMS incidents last year. If you break that down and take the car crashes out of there, we went on 127 medicals, which makes up about 49% of our call volume. So about half of what we do is medical based. Now, that medical criteria that we go on is a priority dispatch system. So if someone calls 911 and it doesn't meet certain criteria, the fire department doesn't go. So we're guessing, rough estimates, there's 100 to 200 additional medicals that the fire department's not responding to, that law enforcement with the paramedics take care of. So just some good example, or the good intent calls, some examples of those are if we're dispatched to a call and then we're canceled either by an alarm company, a monitoring company, a deputy on scene. Someone calls in smoke and they think it's a fire, that's classified as a good intent call. The service calls come in, they're smoke water issues, sprinkler pipes break and flood part of a building or something like that. The hazardous conditions can be CO alarms, hazmat type incidents, natural gas leaks, and then obviously the fire is anything that's actually got a fire to deal with. So response times. So last year, our average response time was 5 minutes, 55 seconds. Now that is just within the city limits of Victoria. It does not include our mutual aid runs or anything that we do in Laketown Township, which we cover a good portion of. So breaking that down a little bit further, 158 calls, or about 64%, we were there in less than 5 minutes. The 74 calls, we were in a 6 to 10 minute response time, and then 14 calls were greater than 10 minutes. I'll get to a slide a little bit later, but it'll show you that we ran 15 mutual aid calls last year to neighboring cities. So that those 14 calls that you're seeing there are mutual aid runs, basically. In 2016, our average response time was 6 minutes and 32 seconds. So we're down about 30 seconds, a little over 30 seconds, which is great. This one breaks it down a little bit further. So we've got 2 command vehicles that we operate, which staff respond directly from their residence. We've got our rescue truck and an engine. So the top line that you'll see on that, the orange line, that is our average response time from when we receive the call till when we have someone on scene. So that command vehicle number 1, 4 minutes, 17 seconds is our average time to get someone there. The second command vehicle bumps up to just under 6 minutes. We'll go to an engine, the rescue, and we're at 7 minutes, and then our engine is 8 minutes. So it may seem a little while, but that's taking into account the people that are staffing the rescue and the engine are at home, at work, they're leaving what they're doing, traveling to the fire station, getting dressed, and then responding to the scene. What this does not include, these times, is the 911 processing time. So when you call 911, sometimes they may take upwards of a minute to get the information that they need before we're started. So there's a little bit of extra time in there. There is not a good standard to say what response time should be. There is some stuff that NFPA puts out there that says depending on your population density, you should have X amount of people to a scene within a certain amount of time. But truly, it's up to each individual city and the service that they want to provide to their residents. So,
Can you identify any scenarios, and we don't have to go into any details, but where response time caused a situation to be worse than it would have been had we been able to get there faster? Any serious medical issues or fires that got out of control or anything that?
so fires, I can't say anything specific. What I can tell you is a fire right now doubles in size, and they're actually even saying closer to triples in size every minute. So obviously the longer it takes, the more consumed that fire is going to take over the building. The most critical medical portion probably is cardiac arrest victims. And I think it's for every minute that goes by and an AED is not on scene and applied to the patient, their likelihood of surviving the incident drops by like 10%. So I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head, but those are two major incidents that would play into response times and getting someone there quick. So
Thank you.
yeah. Next one is just the incidents by the hour of day. And as you can see, the 4 p.m. basically to 8 p.m. is our busiest time out of the day. But looking at those top three graphs, it really shows you that daytime is our busiest time, and that's where we struggle. And not just us as a whole, but in the fire service, we struggle with staffing. People leave town to go to work, can't leave work for incidents and stuff like that. So we're fortunate right now. We've got several people on our public works department that help us out during the day that can respond to calls. So we're not having any major issues with this, but just to highlight that where the calls are coming. So
Is it safe to infer that you've done all the sweet talking you can of the entire public works staff?
I think so. Right, Ann? Yeah. No, we have a very good relationship, and we're fortunate that we have the opportunity to do this. Yeah, yep. Sign her up. Nope. Mutual aid given received. So just a 3-year comparison on this. 2016 obviously was very busy with mutual aid runs. We left the city 33 times to help neighboring departments. Last year that dropped to 15. So it was just general fires in the county where our typical mutual aid partners are. We're down significantly. And then last year we received mutual aid on 12 occasions. So we had neighbors come in and help us on 12 different incidents. So the fire loss by month, this is something we've started tracking a little bit more over the last year. But in total last year, strictly related to fires, we had about $151,000 in damage. Now, this goes off a very generic estimating tool that we have, so more than likely that number is much higher after restoration contractors get in there and can address truly what happened to the structure, what needs to be fixed. So the March incident that you see on there for the $107,000 was a garage fire. And then April, we had 2 smaller fires, one in a commercial building and one in a garage. So this is something we will track a little bit more as we start to go on. But as I said, this is strictly fire related, so it does not include any property damage caused by sprinkler, water mains, pipes breaking, anything like that. So one other thing we did last year just is we restructured the organization and how we operate, and we broke it into 2 divisions. So this is kind of tough to see, but we have 2 divisions, a training and an operations division. We have an assistant chief that oversees each of those, and then they have specific staff assigned underneath them to work in that. So that was kind of a big change to have an assistant chief to oversee each division and make sure that the tasks within that are getting done. Our operations division, what we really focused on last year was the safety of our firefighters. Some new challenges that face staff right now are cardiac cancer and mental health. We're actually finding cancer is killing more firefighters than cardiac issues because of all the toxins, the carcinogens, and stuff like that. So one of the big moves we made last year was we replaced all of our structural firefighting hoods with a new carcinogen blocking hood, which filters those particles out. Our turnout gear was change to improve the safety of our folks to help block that as well. We put in a turnout gear extractor machine, which is a giant washing machine, which is specialized to clean the turnout gear that we use, and that was grant funded. And then we started the process of purchasing new portable radios and our air packs, or our self-contained breathing apparatus. So a lot of these fire scenes now, they're being treated more like a hazmat incident, and after you come out, you have to go through decontamination and clean up and all that. So our training division, obviously we're very busy in here, but we moved to a new records management system last year, which allows us to better track our ISO training requirements. And this platform also has online courses available to us, so we can start to offer some online classes to our staff. Instead of coming in every single Monday night, they have a little bit of flexibility and can do some of this stuff at their home in their spare time. So we logged about 4,600 hours in training last year, so that averages out to about 131 hours per firefighter. So our command staff continue to work on a Blue Card program, which is a National Incident Command Certification. So in order to be Blue Card certified, you have a 50-hour online course. You spend 24 hours in a simulation lab. After that, successfully completing that, you're certified. And then you have 36 hours of continuing education every 3 years to go along with that. So it's a very good program for our staff to continue to work on managing fire scenes. Just we don't get a ton of experience on the fire ground doing it. So this gives us the option to do it in another method. So we participated in an active shooter drill with other public safety agencies at the Arboretum. We had one firefighter go through and earn their fire apparatus operator certification. That's a 40-hour class that teaches them how to run the trucks and pump water. So that's when they drive, they have to pump water and know how to operate the truck. So we had 4 firefighters complete their NFPA 1001 certification, which is the initial coursework that they have to do to become a firefighter. That's about a 160-hour course. We had 5 people earn their fire instructor certifications. 1 earned their certification as a fire officer. And then one kind of unique thing we did last year is we launched a leadership coaching program with a leadership coach who's working with our command staff on all the stuff outside of managing fires. So communications and working with their staff a little bit better. So that's been a very interesting course, and it's been very fun for our staff so far. So grants, we were very successful in grants last year. We received about $34,000 in grant funding last year. So as I mentioned, that turnout gear extractor was paid for a grant, and some training funds that came in there from the state as well. So what that does not include is private donations that we had received from many residents throughout the year as well. So they're not factored into that. Fire inspections, this was something we kind of got into new last year, but we get to work closely with our building department now on new projects. So the fire department now takes permitting plan review for all the sprinkler systems and fire alarm systems, and then all the inspections that go along with that. So any new building that comes into town or remodels where sprinklers or fire alarms are involved, the fire department's doing that. That work used to be included with our building officials or building inspectors. So kind of taking some of that workload off of them. We also pulled that process back under control of the city. Our sprinkler permit used to be done through the state of Minnesota, and they have 3 people that cover the entire state to issue permits, so they are rather slow. So that gives us an opportunity to turn these permits around a lot faster and get contractors working and moving on these projects. So we hit a total of 53 commercial inspections last year, so that includes fire alarm, sprinkler systems, and then general fire safety inspections. So we're out doing proactive work, addressing fire issues in these commercial facilities, and kind of using that as an education tool for the building owners. We completed an additional 60 fire inspections on residential systems, and those are the sprinkler systems in multifamily dwellings and buildings such as that. So,
Chief Hager, are you seeing any sprinkled single-family residential dwellings at this point?
we do have a couple in town. Just because there was a law in place for a few months that required any single family over 4,500 square feet to be sprinkled, and that law was overturned within a matter of months. So there were a couple that were built within the city that was required at the time. However, no one has proactively done it. So,
And do those installations also require a fire marshal or fire chief inspection to?
yes, yep, they do. So they'd be similar to like a plumbing system, something like that. So,
But you're not anticipating any significant demand on your staff if that was just kind of a one-time?
nope. So the biggest residential ones we're working through right now are like the Whispering Hills neighborhood, where the multifamily dwellings are all sprinkled in there. So
Thank you.
yeah. On to duty crews. So we started kind of a new staffing model in September of last year. And this is a staff shift of 3 firefighters that work at the station on, right now they're working a 6 to 10 p.m. shift on Friday nights. We got to that 6 to 10 p.m. Friday night by going through kind of a bunch of the data that I've shared here, but about 3 years worth of call volume and looking at when our busiest time was. And our peak time for some reason is 9 p.m. on Friday nights. So we're staffing this 4-hour shift. What this does, it allows our staff to contribute in a more structured manner that may fit their schedule a little bit better. They get to do training, work detail, public education type stuff while they're on shift. And then it reduces our response time, obviously, because we're not coming from home. The truck leaves the station. Now, what we find is, I'll say 85 to 90% of our calls can be handled by that small crew. So it's a little more effective than paging 35 people out to come to a call that you may need 3. So what our goal is continue to expand this program by 1 night per week annually. I don't have sufficient call data yet, just because we basically ran 3 months in this last year to say this is reducing response times, but I'm hoping that's something that we can get to in the future. So we logged about 156 hours in that program last year. So our open house in October, in conjunction with Fire Prevention Week, we hold an open house annually. So we figure about 500 people attended last year. And some highlights of the event were a medical helicopter landed at the fire station. We did a fire sprinkler demonstration, fire truck rides, and various other public safety demonstrations from some other public safety partners. So the Sheriff's Office, Ridgeview Ambulance Service, Centerpoint Energy, Public Health, and the Weather Service. So currently, this year's event is planned October 8th. A bunch of other community events that we were involved in last year. We had our 1929 Chevy, that truck that I mentioned earlier, at every single one of the classic car nights this year. We held a blood drive in September, so we had about 35 people that came up to the fire station, donated blood. We are doing that again April 17th of this year, so you can sign up on the Red Cross website if anyone's interested. We did a car seat inspection clinic last year as well, in conjunction with Public Health, and we had 25 people that were able to come into the fire station and have their car seats inspected within their cars. So that's a really good thing for us to do. They're saying that 75% of the car seats that are out there today are either installed correctly or not used properly. So having someone certified that can go through and make those corrections is pretty important. And then National Night Out in August, our department members attended 17 neighborhood parties. So a couple other things that we hit during Fire Prevention Week. We had story time at the library downstairs, and we read to the children, and we also went to Victoria Elementary School and met with some of the classes there, hit on some fire safety things. So staffing, like I said, we're sitting very well on this. I'm proud to say we have 35 people, which is a full roster for us. Currently, got a waiting list of about 6 people, so I'm in a really good situation compared to some other people some neighboring cities are sometimes 5 to 10 below, so of where they were anticipated to be. So as we hired 2 new people in 2017. We revamped our hiring process in 2017 to, I want to say, make sure we're picking the right candidates, so it's a little more involved than it has been in the past. We're averaging 15 firefighters per incident. As I mentioned, just over 4,000 staff hours. And then we recognize staff for years of service awards. So Steve Dahl hit a 30-year anniversary. And then Jason Huckreed and Mike Mullerin hit 5 years. So I got to throw this in here, even though it's a 2018. Our longest serving firefighter, Rick Leitner, celebrated 40 years in January. So I think that's a pretty significant accomplishment. So we'll make sure he's in next year's report too. Equipment compliance. So we have some standards that we have to meet through that credit towards our ISO certification and NFPA. So one of the big things is our fire hose has to be tested annually. So we pulled just shy of 8,000 feet of fire hose out, laid it out, and tested it all. We utilize a third-party vendor to do this, and at the same time, they have to test all of our ladders. So, like I mentioned, this plays into our ISO rating, so if we're not doing this kind of stuff, it counts as a ding on our insurance score. And then the same thing with our fire engines. The pumps have to be tested and certified every year, so all of that went through and was passed. We had a 2% failure rate on our fire hose, which is pretty minimal. So as I mentioned, that third-party vendor does it all for us. It saves a lot of staff time for us and a lot of wear and tear on the equipment. If we're out there doing it with our big fire trucks, it's a lot more hard on the equipment than what the equipment that they use to do it, which is just a little pump and a trailer. So looking ahead in 2018, so this is kind of what we've got lined up for the year, what we're shooting for. We're anticipating a couple of retirements in 2019, so we're going to start a hiring process in late spring and hopefully bring a couple of candidates on board to fill those vacancies. Looking at implementing a duty officer program to reduce the number of firefighters that need to respond to specific calls. So this would kind of be in conjunction with that duty crew program that I talked about. However, this would be 1 or 2 people that are on call during certain times to take more of the minor stuff that we've identified that can be handled with 1 or 2 people. So all of our portable radios were replaced in 2018. We're moving towards implementation of an online checklist program that allows all of our paper checklists, truck checks, equipment maintenance checks all to be done online and basically on people's phones. We'll be putting on a mock car crash for the Holy Family Catholic High School to emphasize the dangers of distracted or impaired driving, and that is coming up in April. That's something we did in 2015, and we got some really good response from it, so we will be partnering with the Sheriff's Office again to work on that. And as I mentioned earlier, we are continuing the work on the process of purchasing our new self-contained breathing apparatus, which are due for replacement in 2019. And then we're going to begin the process of purchasing a mini pumper, which we've got set for replacement in 2020. So that's kind of our plan for the year. So questions?
Comment first, which is thanks for your great leadership. I mean, this is a very thorough and encouraging report.
Good.
I think staffing in particular really is a great testament there. I think we're up, 50+% since our low in the low 20s a couple of years ago, and with a waiting list. That's hats off to you. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Couple budget questions. One is the online workflow plans you have. Does that require any budget that isn't? Will there be a budget request for any equipment to support that?
No, that was the subscription to that was included in this year's budget. So
Okay, great.
So
And then-
beyond that one-time fee, annual fee, there's nothing else to go with it. So
And then the truck, I know we do a pretty good job of keeping the SIP items noted far enough in the future, but are you anticipating any challenges in terms of the funding for that truck replacement?
the 2020 one that I talked about,
Yes.
I am not anticipating any problems. The funding's in place in that 5-year CIP plan, and really what I'm hoping to do with this truck is kind of downsize our operation and replace 2 vehicles with that one. So we're kind of in a position right now, we've got a third engine that we really don't need at this point, nor will we need 10 years down the road. It's not getting used right now. So I think we can be a little more efficient on how those trucks are utilized by replacing 2 of them with one. So
And I'm sure from an operations standpoint, less maintenance, upkeep, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Is there a good secondary market to sell those vehicles, or are they going to be kind of scrap at this point? I know we get a pretty good life out of everything.
I have spoke with a vendor already that indicated there's some value to one of them. Ballpark 20 to 30,000. The other one was less than 5,000. So
And do you have a guesstimate for what the cost of the new truck will be?
We've got 300,000 budgeted in the CIP right now, so obviously I'm hoping we come in less than that, so.
About a third of it could be, well, no, sorry, 10%.
10%, yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Council?
Just a comment again, your staffing level just sounds like it's really on par and with a waiting list. And I think that's a testament to you and the morale that you probably set in your leadership. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great job. You guys are always there. You're always responding, right? Everybody speaks very highly of you and the entire department, so great job.
I'm
pass it.
impressed. I was impressed 9.5 years ago when I made myself one of your guinea pigs, and I'm still impressed.
Well done, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Mayor and Council.
Next item, 6A, 2018 commission members. Doug?
Mr. Mayor, we're asking you to interview the people you have in front of you tonight to make the appointments to the Park and Rec Committee and the Water Quality Committee.
We have candidates equal to the number of openings, correct?
Yes, with
Cindy, help me, is that correct?
the, yeah, with the change, there's been some that have dropped, so yes, now we're,
So-
except for the planning commission, but for tonight, yes.
Okay.
We have 3 for Park and Rec and 3 vacancies, and there's room on the Water Quality for the 2 that have applied.
So with that, let me open it up to the council for questions.
Should we just do a brief intro for everybody? And
Yeah, I think that works. Why don't we start over here with Water Quality Committee on the left? If you would come up, please, and just give us a very short intro, name and address, and then why you'd like to be on the committee.
My name is Clay Everson, and I live in Victoria, 8100 Bayberry Circle. I'm a 22-year resident of the city, and prior to that, I lived up north, just a little bit south of Duluth in the Ascove area. And I'm recently retired full-time, and I see the commission as an opportunity for me to participate and to give back to the community. When I lived up north, I was pretty active. I was a city council member and held a number of commissioner jobs because it was a small town. And I worked for the local school district. I moved down here and my job got infinitely busier, and so I wasn't able to get involved in the community until now. I have a lifelong interest in conservation of resources, starting probably with my years as a Boy Scout, but continuing on into my adult years. I believe that we owe our future generations good quality water for their use, whether it's for recreation or for utility use. I'm also pragmatic, more pragmatic than I was when I was much younger, that I believe that the landowners around a body of water, whether it's a lake or a pond or a stream or a river, use the lake or the pond or river. Most of them are good stewards of the land and the water, and who take value in the resource. I think that the commission, with as far as I understand, for the council, is education and to recommend good policy. And I believe that they are the key to ensuring that both public and private interests of users whose needs are met, and that the body of water is met. So that's why I want to be on your commission.
Thank you, Clay. For the record, did we call it a committee or a commission? I thought it was a committee. Does it really matter?
I don't think so, I don't know what, it's newly formed, so.
isn't a commission a legal body that has the ability to make policy?
I don't know what the difference is.
I'm pretty sure we call it the committee.
You call it
says
a
committee
committee
in the
/ commission.
Right. As long as there's not some legal problem with it, that's fine. I believe we did call it a committee. The other thing I want to just clarify, if I remember right, the council approved 2 at-large seats, the other seats to be filled by the HOAs where they were selecting the people. I'm assuming you're running for one of the at-large seats?
I'm running for one of the at-large, yes.
Okay, thank you. Council, questions?
Quick question for the city attorney. Is there a legal distinction between a committee and a commission? Just curious.
Generally, commissions are exactly what the interim city manager said. It's a legal body that can enact policy. Committees are usually advisory in nature, and I assume that's what the goal of this committee.
You know, in that case, it makes a difference. The council approved a committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Sure. You've got some background working with water in your previous life, right?
I do, in my previous life.
And what was your profession when you?
I was a teacher and administrator in public education.
All right. Well, you know, there's Victoria has some beautiful lakes, and there's some threats to those lakes, just like there are to all the lakes in Minnesota. But what would you say are probably the top 4 or 5 threats to the lakes around here in this city, as far as water quality is concerned?
Based upon direct observation, I have a dog that I take walking and swimming, and we have gone into some of the local lakes where at certain times of the year, the water is like pea soup. So that's making me think that there are probably fertilizer issues, that perhaps we're getting some drainage of outside fertilizer sources, maybe lawns, maybe whatever, that are creating water quality issues for the lakes. I also have noticed that people that like to mow their property right down to the water level, unlike the city, by the way, are finding that geese are getting up onto are using the shorter grass as a way to add fertilizer to the lake, and that becomes an issue. And I also think that a lot of times people are not real careful in terms of they're just not thinking when they take things out to the lake to enjoy it for a recreational purpose. They're leaving water bottles, they're leaving wrappers and things like that that are in the water that not only don't they look good, but they create issues for some of the animals that are going to live in there. And I'm not blaming the landowners. I think the landowners, for the most part, are doing a pretty good job of respecting what they have because they realize that it's going to be, I think it's the casual user.
Thank you.
So I have a question, and again, I'll ask both candidates this. So there are a number of legal bodies that currently have regulations and codes and various things, including the city, but also the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District, the DNR, et cetera. And so I wonder, with your experience, if you see any obvious gaps, overlaps, where do you see the real opportunity for this commission to make or committee, excuse me?
Well, I think, in my opinion, the committee is to deal with local issues. I believe that the state, the DNR, is doing what they can with the resources that they have. I think that I'm not well aware of anything going on in the county, but I know that the Minnehaha Watershed District, I've run into some of their people that are doing water quality testing during the day, and you know they're kind of dealing with it on a piecemeal basis. I think for a city like Victoria is that they have a direct influence into the zoning and the use permits that they can do. And I think, again, you don't want to hammer people who own property around a body of water, but at the same time, I think that we have the responsibility to make sure that they're educated in best practices, and that's what I think a city can do because it's much closer to the residents.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Lance? Name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Lance Fisher. I live at 6870 Rolling Acres Road. I've lived there for over 30 years. And obviously been a Victoria resident that long. Prior to that, I lived in Chanhassen. And I've been involved in water-based recreation since I was 3. And have a strong interest in maintaining the water quality, not just from a recreational interest, but from a aesthetics perspective as well. Some of my background that might be of interest, I did serve on the Minnehaha Creek Watershed Board for 9 years, 3 years as its president. was appointed by Carver County. That was several years ago, and I had a little more free time than I did lately, but now I'm getting close to retirement and have more time to invest in the city, and would like to put some of my knowledge about water quality and water quality maintenance practices to good use.
Were you looking for one of the at-large positions?
I think so. I'm certainly not officially here representing the Schutz Lake Homeowners Association. I am supposedly president of that organization, but it's not very active, and we haven't had a meeting to elect officials for about 3 years, so I don't expect that to continue in any case, and I'm not representing them here tonight.
Okay. Council, questions?
So what do you think is we've talked before, and I know you're active on Schutz Lake, but what do you think the biggest threat to our lakes in Victoria is right now?
Actually, the biggest threat is invasive species, and there's no easy answers. We have Eurasian water milfoil in at least 3 of the lakes. We don't have zebra mussels yet, but historically or statistically, it's inevitable that we will at some point probably have in some of them. I'm hoping we can defer that long enough to the point where there actually may be some treatment or effective solution to minimizing the impact. The other area that I like to be focusing on is getting the word out to the residents of the city and the city council that lake water quality isn't a riparian issue. That is, the primary source of pollutants and nutrients isn't the homeowners around the lake, although there are some that contribute, but for the most part, the issue is that it's a watershed-wide drainage into the lake that brings all the nutrients in. And I think we, as a city, can do a better job of policing the use of fertilizer and particularly the practice of dumping nutrients, i.e. grass clippings and leaf rakings, into the street where they end up in the lakes.
Thank you. Council, other questions?
I had the same question that I had.
Could you ask it again?
With the other bodies that currently have some say and some roles around water quality and such, where do you see the gaps and or overlaps and the opportunity for this committee?
One of the biggest gaps that I'm well aware of from my time on the Watershed District Board is that the Watershed District has no effective means of policing their own rules. They rely on the cities to do that, and the cities tend to operate on a complaint-only basis. And something, again, that could be done is to raise awareness amongst the interested parties of the city, neighbors, et cetera, to be more cognizant of problems showing up, both from some of the stuff I mentioned before, people throwing grass clippings in the street, but also from the incidences where construction is going on and proper erosion control measures aren't in place. There's another issue I think the city's probably already wrestling with, and that is the stormwater pond maintenance. That's an area that the Watershed District has contemplated providing that service, but they never have. They've pretty much always required cities to maintain that system, and it's often not a high priority for cities when the budget comes due.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you. Hey, Doug, Cindy, you may know this better. I don't want to put you on the spot here. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's 3 HOAs in the city that have expressed that they were going to select somebody to serve on this committee also.
And he says 2.
Is it 2 or 3?
I think I've only seen 2.
Zumbra, I heard there's Zumbra, Wasserman, and Schutz Lake.
I just know the name. Rude?
Mm-hmm.
Stan Rude.
Stan Root, that's Wasserman, isn't it?
Yep. And then Debbie Kraft for Schutz.
You haven't heard from Dick Hawley from Sombra?
I didn't get an email, but I don't, no.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Did we had talked about Pearson also at one point.
We didn't do anything with the HOAs, we just advertised for the at-large. I don't know who, because it was not real clear, it sounded like that we didn't want staff involvement, it was more just a.
All right, we should, I think the intent was to reach out to the HOAs, whether it's an HOA or a lake association, depending what they call themselves, and they were going to select their own representatives, if they were organized, if they had an organized body.
So you want staff to reach out to them? Maybe with Ben and Aaron gone, maybe they slip through, I don't know.
Yeah, I know a number of them reached out to me. I assume they reached out to other members of the council. If we could, it sounds like we heard from two. I know Dick Hawley has expressed an interest to me. If there's any other known associations that we should contact, we should at least contact them.
Why don't we have anything that anybody's received forwarded on to Cindy, and then she can kind of do a
Good point.
whatever's left over, proactively go find them, please.
So I'll send you anything else I have, but those I had the three, and that was it. So, council, any other questions on this? Comments?
I had heard someone from Pearson Lake was going to get involved. That's apparently not true.
I didn't hear from them. Could we reach out to, if somebody has something forwarded, if not, reach out to them? Okay, any other associations that anybody knows of? Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to switch over to Park and Rec. John, do you want to go first? Name and address for the record, please. You've never been here before, have you?
Never. My name is John Carlson, and I reside at 752 Tilia Lane in the Woodlands, and you're all welcome to come over sometime and we'll have a beer. Or we'll meet at Enki. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to apply for another 3-year position. I served this past 3 years on the Park and Rec Commission. It's been a great opportunity to work with Ann. She's been very patient with me because I do ask a lot of questions in the meetings. And I also serve on the finance department or on the finance committee, and it's great to work with Kelly. And I do very much value the importance of the volunteer-staff relationship. Part of that definitely stems from my own professional career with the American Cancer Society as Chief Operating Officer. I guess, why am I applying? I guess I must enjoy it, because I do. I know all of you up here are here because somewhere along the line you got snagged into, really being into it. And I guess that, that's happened to me. And I think it's a positive thing. I've always been involved in my life with whether it's my church or other organizations, and wanting to be a part of the greater good and do something positive for my community and go above and beyond. And that's kind of what I've tried to do. And I take the role seriously. I attend all the meetings. I really prep. And one of the things I'm proud of personally, there was something nagging me when we would be evaluating a park, maybe redevelopment. And I go, it's a piece of paper, but I don't even know anything about that park. So this past summer, I made it a point to bike or ride, but mostly bike, to every one of our parks in our city. Public, private, Wasserman, and Pearson. And I think that we've got something started now, which I think is wonderful. And Ann's been a part of helping with this, and that's that as we're looking at a development of an existing park, or like the work with Wasserman, of trying to see if we can get a group of our members to go out and take a look at the facility. And I think it really helps us because, we're being asked to provide, involvement in decision making of things, and I think it's an important thing to do because it's more than just a piece of paper that we're looking at. And I would say one thing that's been very positive, and Ann has taken the lead on this, is as we look at development of a newer existing park, Ann will make sure that we're getting stakeholder involvement from, people that reside in that area. So we're being respectful of people in the neighborhood. And that's another thing for me in terms of how I got involved initially when the city was with the power line issue. And I got on my high horse because I was upset because the county, I didn't feel like was really stepping up and taking a look at what Xcel was trying to do in terms of putting power lines in our city. And I felt real concerned that, there were neighbors, people I know, that were going to have power lines put right through, and there wasn't a proper access, and it's just one of those things that happens. There wasn't enough, really land. And I got involved with that, and that kind of started things for me in terms of getting involved. And but I guess that turned out for the better, and I'm very proud of that. So anyway, I enjoy it, and I don't know if you have any questions.
Well, John, thank you. I know from working with you on the rec committee and talking to you about many other objects, you're always well prepared. You have very well thought out questions. You clearly spend a lot of time looking through that. So thank you for that service. I would love to see you continue to provide that to the community as a whole. I think you're a great asset for all of us. So, council, questions?
We'd be foolish not to reappoint you, John. Go sit down.
You're passionate about it. You do your homework. I truly appreciate your input.
I do want to thank you. I do want to also acknowledge Tom Gregory. Tom was assigned from the council to serve or be a part of the liaison to the Park and Rec, and that process is very valuable. Hopefully it helps you and the council, but it also really helps, I think, our staff and our group, and also Tom, who's now been a part of our group. That's a real positive. So thank you for being a part of that.
I enjoyed
process.
my year with the Park and Rec.
Council?
I'll just echo my thanks for your service for the past 3 years, and I'll tell you, as somebody who asks a lot of questions, I think it's educational for everybody around you, so don't stop, please. And I was going to ask you what you were most proud of, but you beat me to the punch, so again, thank you for...
Well, it's not totally the same, because that's what I'm personally proud of, but in terms of the what's benefited the community, it's been a lot of our existing parks that are getting upgraded, the trails. We're down to 2 final trails that are gravel, that, we're getting that process done. And then also with the new developments, the wonderful new parks that we're creating. I'm very excited about Wasserman. I'm very excited about Pearson, even though I know that's out there, but I think it's something that we can't start too early about, even though it's not even a part of our city yet. But I mean, that's what we need to be doing. We need to be thinking long-term and short-term. We'd be thinking about small ball and big ball. So anyway, thank you.
John, you tipped us off with your power line caper. You were so effective there. It was we should have figured that you'd continue on in your good works.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all the kind comments.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Thanks. Larry?
Larry Schultz, 1148 Parkview Court. I've been a resident of Victoria since last July, so relatively new citizen, and retired last end of May after a 40-year career in healthcare administration. I've spent my whole life trying to improve the health of the communities in which I lived, and I've been an active participant in all those. I'm interested because I feel it's important for somebody to give of their time to the community in which they lived. I've always done that, and so I want to continue that now that I've moved here. And I have a special interest in health and wellness, and the Park and Rec position looked like a good opportunity for me to lend my skills. A couple of things I can point out. I've been on numerous boards, on both sides of it, either on the board or from a staff standpoint, so I understand the roles that people play and the responsibilities for each of those positions and respect those. The other thing is I've been real involved in healthcare last number of years. As most of my career has been as a CEO of healthcare organizations, and we've had public-private partnerships, and I think I could bring that concept for consideration to the community. where we could bring some private dollars to help with some of the parks and recreation opportunities. Our healthcare organization, I recently moved from Fergus Falls, had a number of things. We had a health organization called Fatty Natties, where we offered many of the things that are offered through town here. We had partnerships with the city, with the school district, with private organizations to improve the health of the community. So I think I could bring that perspective as well.
Thank you. Council, questions? Well, I'll begin. What would be, from what you know now, I know you're new to the community, what would be your number one priority if there was no budget constraints?
Well, just again, it's being relatively new. I looked on some of the past minutes. It seems like the Wasserman Park is a wonderful opportunity. It's an area that can be developed from scratch and make another opportunity. This community is very attractive because of its lakes and parks, and I think that does a lot to attract new people. That's one reason why my wife and I moved here. That and our children and grandchildren live in the Twin Cities, so we're closer to them. But specifically, Victoria has nice parks, and it's an opportunity to, in this case of the Wasserman Park, to expand that asset for our community.
Well, we'd always welcome any public-private financing to make that a reality. Thank you. Council? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Unless the council has any other questions, Cindy, there was one more, there's 3 openings on Park and Rec. One individual couldn't make it tonight?
Right, James Thomas.
Okay. At this point, unless the council has other things they want to discuss, I move we appoint the 4 individuals here plus the 1 person that applied but was not able to make it tonight.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, all 5 are appointed. As a follow-up, let's confirm in a follow-up meeting what we hear from the Lake Association folks. Okay, thanks everyone.
Comment, I just so appreciate the 4 of you and Mr. Thomas for stepping up. It's a big deal. I mean, these are big time commitments for these, and particularly the Water Quality Commission with Clay and Lance. Sounds like you have some really great expertise and some good ideas, and look forward to hearing about it.
So I'd like to echo that. Thank you, all 4 of you. Let's move on. Kelly, new business 6B, finance fund balance.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our annual discussion about what we need to do to get our general fund unassigned fund balance to our policy level, which is 30% of the next year's budgeted expenditures. So at the end of 2017, our general fund unassigned fund balance should be roughly $1.25 million based on the 2018 budget. The current unassigned fund balance is about $59,000 higher than that amount. And there are several reasons for that difference. Some of that is revenues in excess of budget, not including the accelerated building permit revenues that we've already taken into account and transferred. We were underspent in several other categories, so we need to somehow allocate that $59,000 to get to our 30% policy goal. So there's a couple of ways we do that. One way we do that is through assigning fund balance, and that would be for items we maybe didn't spend in the current year and expect to do in a future year, or we would also assign fund balance to set aside for contingencies for items that may occur. So in looking at our assigned fund balance at year-end 2016 and comparing it to what we would like to see it for 2017, staff has made some recommendations. These were presented to the Finance Committee at a meeting at 5 o'clock this evening, and they concurred with staff recommendations. I won't go through all of these line by line, but maybe touch on the ones that are new or have changed. For the comprehensive plan, we've been working through that. At the end of 2016, we had $82,500 in assigned fund balance. We had expected to spend most of that in 2017. We did not, so we're recommending to carry over $49,000 to be spent in 2018. The sheriff's contract, we did not spend everything we had anticipated in 2017. That was largely due to a delay in the start for the additional sheriff's deputy. So what we did is recommended setting that aside, and that allowed us to reduce our 2018 general fund budget. Scanning, we had $5,000 set aside for 2017. We did not spend that. We'd like to continue to set that aside and do a large-scale scanning project in 2018 for our building inspections department records.
Excuse me, Kelly, is any of that catch up or is that keep up?
The scanning is a project we've kind of been working on for the last 2 years, and we've just never fully committed the resources to it. We've started it. We kind of have a good structure in place, but
So as an ongoing budget line, it's not expected to continue at that 10,000 level? That's more of a year or two to finish getting caught up?
correct. We've been putting in $5,000 a year. We did so in 2016 and 2017. We did not fund it at all for 2018. So
Okay.
we're hopeful that the 10,000 will complete a good chunk of the process, and then we can see what's needed for 2019 to finish it if necessary.
Thank you.
There's a couple items from the fire department that were unspent from the 2018 budget related to training and radios. Same thing with strategic planning. We had budgeted for a strategic planning session in 2017 and did not do that, so be a carryover for that. So all in all, what staff is recommending is a decrease of about $29,000 over our 2016 year-end fund balance. So if you take that into account and then factor in the $59,000 roughly that I had referenced early, if you add those two amounts together, you come up with about $87,984 needed to get to that 30% unassigned fund balance level. And the recommendation is to transfer those funds to the long-term street maintenance fund, which is set aside primarily for street overlays. So with that, I can take any questions.
Council questions?
This process I've seen for many years. This is a very disciplined process, and I think this is covered by a policy, right?
Yes, we do have a fund balance policy.
Fund balance policy, and how long has that policy been in place?
I believe it was adopted in 2011.
2011. So this is one of those virtually non-existent policies that I read about in the Chanhassen paper, which had an article in there in January that talked about the fact that Victoria virtually has no existing policies. This policy, this non-existent policy, which is very old for a non-existent policy, is kind of like the revenue stabilization policy, which we dealt with in the last meeting, which also is very old. And it's also kind of like the debt management policy, which doesn't exist either, but is more strict than state guidelines. So it's interesting. Every time we deal with one of these non-existent policies, I feel like I will bring it up and put it on the record that the policies do exist, and Victoria is not operating by the seat of its pants.
So for a city with a lack of financial controls that continues to get year-on-year awards for our financial management.
But that's ironic, too, because how does this, we have an award-winning finance manager, and we have good controls, no audit deficiencies on internal control deficiencies, and we do so without virtually no policies.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I never said we had no policies. I said we had very few policies.
You said, I'll quote you, I've got the article with me. Virtually non-existent.
Virtually
You told
non-existent
the world in the
doesn't mean
newspaper
none.
that policies in Victoria are virtually non-existent.
And I stand by that claim. Can we get the resolution up?
I move we approve a resolution approving fund balance assignment and transfers for the year end of 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That is approved. Next item, Kara, this is yours. Well 2.5.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in the end of 2017, the Council had a couple of different discussions related to future water supply needs for the city. A workshop was held on December 7th where we discussed it in fairly great detail. And then on December 18th, the City Council authorized completion of Phase 2 of a well siting study, and that relates to our future well fields south of the city, so figuring out where, as we grow to the south, where we will have wells located. But through that process, staff also identified a need to replace well number 2 due to its deteriorating condition. Well number 2 is located adjacent to the water treatment plant off of 80th Street. It was constructed, forgot to check with Ann on that date, but many, many years ago, before the city had a water treatment plant. It's been there for quite a long time. And at the time that the treatment plant was constructed, the plant was designed to treat additional water that was intended to come from well number 2 through a redevelopment process. So the plan had been to redevelop the well in its current location so that it produced more water that would be treated at the plant. Well, since the time of the plant construction, through various investigations of well number 2, it's been determined that the condition is deteriorating and it's at risk of failure. Plus, we don't have the ability to redevelop it to produce more water. So staff identified Katy Hills Park right across the street as a location for a replacement well that we've decided to call well 2.5. What is nice about this location is its close proximity to this red line is our 16-inch trunk diameter water line. So the new well would be connected to our raw water line that feeds directly into the treatment plant. Well number 2 would be, once 2.5 was online, well number 2 would be taken off service, but be maintained as an emergency backup well in the event that we ran into a situation where we had trouble with one of the other wells. Barr, who has been the consultant that's working on the well siting work for the city, has submitted a proposal for design phase services. Their proposal covers services all the way through construction, but what staff is specifically looking for is authorization for well design and bidding. The target for this work, if the design was completed over the next few months, would be to move forward with construction in the fall and winter. Based on a preliminary schedule provided by the consultant, we'd be looking at startup at the end of the year if everything went according to plan. I would note that Katy Hills Park is included in the city's capital improvement plan for improvement in 2019. So for park improvements in 2019, so it would be helpful to get the well work completed before we tackled whatever park improvements are planned for the city. So with that, I would take any questions that the council has.
Council, questions?
What's the approximate cost of the well? Assuming we go forward with this.
I have it here in my notes. The bar is estimating this well cost at $900,000, and there's how much in 2019 for this well? I think you had 1.5 in there, or 1.25.
I think we had 1.25 in the CIP.
So we were anticipating that this would
potentially cost more. Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're just looking at moving it up a year, moving it starting the design in 2018.
What does that take the water treatment fund, or the water fund down to? Because I know we're talking about another well south.
Yeah, we currently have 2 wells planned in the capital improvement plan going out to 2022. And as of right now, we could potentially pay for both with cash if we continue to have the number of new homes coming in. Initially thought we'd have to bond for one of the wells, but that cash flow is pretty high right now. So for sure we can pay for this one with cash reserves.
So I'm interested to understand the risk of failure, and I know it's very I mean, there's some judgment, a lot of judgment, but I'm interested to hear about that and relative to the time period to bring in this 2.5 online. And then also because we're starting from scratch, does that allow us to install a well that will be able to produce at an even greater level than what we intended when we were going to rehab the old one?
So we'll want to target the volume of water that we need to max out the capacity of the treatment plant will be primarily what we're looking. We wouldn't want to create a well that produces more water than we can treat per se. So that's an element that they'll be looking at through the design. It is handy that we're looking at using the same consultant for this project that's been doing all of our water system work. They've also been integral in evaluating the treatment plant to make sure that we understand any minor modifications we might want to make sure that we're maximizing the capacity of that system. We want to make sure we're using it to its fullest capacity. And I don't know if you're in a position to speak about what our well contractor has noted in the various reviews of the well condition.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are running at about every 7 years removal of the well, repairs, cleaning, etc. And this well, it's been quite some time, but I know we've experienced a lot of pitting within the well casing itself. One of the challenges too with this type of well, it's a screened sand well that it's not real deep, and the intent, I think, at the time the well was constructed was to be able to produce a lot more water than this one is, and I know that down the road, the hope was that we would be able to refurbish this well to produce more water, and that's not the case. So that's why we're looking at alternative locations for this well. So with everything in the ground, it's always challenging to determine when it will go down. So
When was this constructed originally?
I don't know the answer to that.
I want to say 1980.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
If this fails, is there a contingency plan?
So we have we are short on firm well capacity. That's a term with an actual definition. So we want to have enough water supply to meet our needs with our highest producing well out of service. So our highest producing well is well number 4. And so our system is intended to have enough water so that if that well goes down, we can still meet our peak day demands. Well number 2 doesn't produce as much water as well number 4, but certainly if 2 were to go down during the irrigation season, we'd be looking at putting in watering ban, sprinkling ban type nature if this well were to go down in July in a drought year.
And if one of our larger producing wells went down, we'd be probably looking at more significant challenges with banning of total irrigation.
So obviously irrigation being a relatively low priority, in that eventuality, do our interconnects to the other neighboring municipalities help ensure that at least from a safety and sort of residential use domestic water use that were okay?
Yes, from a safety and emergency perspective, I would say yes. One of the challenges that we have, like the Shorewood, is not treated water, so trying to blend that into our system would be a challenge, depending upon the emergency. If it was a wider than just Victoria, the communities that we have interconnects with are going to be looking to take care of their residents first. So that's something that we would have to be real cautious about as well.
Okay. Thank you.
To keep well number 2 as a backup, is there a big investment to keep it running, to keep it repaired?
The DNR will certainly want us to keep that in service, even just from a monitoring perspective, because it provides another monitoring point. But generally, no, we wouldn't be having to necessarily supply water out of it. But I can clarify that with the consultant in terms of what minimal cost that might look like.
Okay, council, other questions? Can I get a motion then?
I'll make a motion to authorize Bar Engineering Company to provide design services for well number 2.5 in the amount not to exceed $47,000.
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Kara. Next item, Kara, I think this is also for you. Number 7, unfinished business, street improvements.
Correct. So we've been working through the 2018 street and drainage improvements for quite some time now. I have on the slide here just the most recent council action. But as a refresher, the 2018 street improvement project includes improvements on Marigold, Narcissus, the rest of this Roy Street area, and then a portion of Kelzer Pond. So these are the last of the unplanned capital improvements that were identified back in 2003 when the city first embarked on its street reconstruction program. So it's a noteworthy milestone. We are here on March 12th of 2018 looking for the council to accept bids and award a contract to a contractor. Bids were received on February 22nd. If the city council authorizes this project for construction, we anticipate that the contractor will be conducting a pre-construction meeting here probably in late March. And the contract is set up to have the project substantially complete by July 27th with final completion by August 31st. The contractor hasn't provided us a schedule yet. That doesn't come until they're awarded a contract, but in some preliminary conversations with them, it does look like they'd be looking to get, right now it looks like they'd be looking to get started on this project as soon as road restrictions are lifted, which would be nice to see it completed sooner than later. These were the bids that were received for the project. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bids were received. Valley Paving provided the low bid amount for both the base bid and base bid plus alternate 1. Alternate 1 included the potential to replace a number of storm sewer manholes with sump manhole structures. So when we build new developments, we do try to include some sump manhole structures prior to discharge points to ponds so that the Public Works Department can clean debris out of that manhole structure before it discharges to ponds to help reduce the amount of sediment that ends up in the ponds in the first place. They're able to come by with a vacuum and vacuum it out of the catch basin, which is much easier than doing that out of a pond. So we did include that as an alternate to see what sort of pricing we would get for it, and at this point staff would be recommending that we move forward with both the base bid and the alternate is the way that would be written. So what we're looking for is a motion to approve a resolution accepting bids and awarding a contract for the 2018 street and drainage improvements. If you were to read the resolution, you would note that it is with Valley Paving for both their base bid and alternate number 1 in a total amount of $980,054.
Council, questions, discussion?
Kara, have we worked with Valley Paving before?
I know they've worked here in the past, but it's been a number of years since, but they're a big contractor that bids a lot of these projects around the area, and they did provide references.
And we have to take the lowest bidder.
Lowest responsible bidder, and I would have no means to deem them not responsible.
I think they're a fairly noteworthy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the name around, and I think credible and all.
Correct.
We had 1.2 million in the capital improvement plan for street and reconstruction, and we're talking about 980 if we accept the alternate one proposal. So
the 980,000 is just the construction costs. The overall project budget is $1.254. It was very coincidental that the overall project budget is right at the 1.2, but that includes a 5% contingency, geotechnical services, and then of course the engineering design and construction observation on the project, and then a projection for legal, fiscal, and administration costs associated with bonding. The project would be financed through Chapter 429 bonds, repaid through a combination of property assessments, utility funds, and general funds as recommended by the finance director.
thank you. So I guess, albeit small, do we need to do anything by the fact that the budget does exceed or the project budget exceeds the budgeted amount?
Since it's just $54 over, I think that we can manage that through the contingency. But if something comes up along the way that starts to look like we would need more of that contingency, typically what happens as those issues arise is we'll end up in close contact with the finance department.
Okay. And in general, I'm very accustomed to us finding project costs to be coming in 5-10% below. Are costs going up dramatically due to the level of activity in the industry, or?
Typically what's happened on our last few projects is we don't end up needing that contingency, so that's why at the end of the project you're seeing that 5 to 10% below. I'm not at a point where I'm comfortable recommending not having a contingency because every street's different, so you just never know what you're going to encounter when you start excavating.
Okay. Thank you.
Council, other questions?
Is there a labor shortage in this industry that we might see next summer?
I'm starting to hear signs of that. In fact, I just saw an article earlier today noting that they're starting to see a labor shortage in construction. But we lost a lot of people to North Dakota is something that I've heard, and they have not all elected to come back with the way that market has changed now.
Okay, thank you.
With
Go
that
ahead.
said, is there any, are there performance provisions in the contract?
Yes. Yep. It's our standard contract language that we have, and completion dates, and they will provide a performance bond and a payment bond.
How does that work if they end up short of manpower? Do they give us a rebate on some of the cost, or?
They are committed to meeting the project completion date, so if they don't meet it, they end up like our contractor from last year was, where they're faced with liquidated damages. So, typically they figure out a way to get it done, but that's why it's important that they don't bid on more work than they can.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly with a company like Valley, I'm not concerned about that here.
Council, any other comments, questions? If not, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution accepting bids and awarding the contract for the 2018 street and damage improvements to Valley Paving, Inc.
Drainage improvements. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Mayor, I would just like to note that we will be sending a mailing out to the residents now, letting them know that this contract has been awarded. This will be our last paper mailing that we send to the residents. We will be moving to electronic communications, so we'll be encouraging people to sign up for those email alerts or make contact with us. What we say in our letter is if they aren't in a position to access the internet, we'll certainly continue to provide them mailed notices, but we find that as we move into construction, it's much more efficient to communicate via those email updates on a weekly basis. We'll also hold one more public meeting on the project once we have the contractor schedule. Typically that's starts to be what folks are interested in hearing more about, so we will be doing those next couple steps yet.
All right, thank you for that update. Go ahead.
Thank you. While we're on the topic of roads, any word on Lakeside Drive and the surcharge?
I got a report late today that doesn't have a lot of context to it because I haven't had a chance to talk to the actual engineer. Let me just pull it up here quickly. They noted that they are going to start resuming measuring every 2 weeks, but it looks like they were still seeing some settlement. So I don't know if, until I talk to the engineer, I don't know if the settlement they're seeing is what he expected to see. And I didn't have an opportunity to talk with him today, but they are going to start monitoring it every 2 weeks, which means we'll be getting much more real-time information. After I talk with the engineer, though, I'll send out an email letting you know. I know it's
thank you. Way past
close.
time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Kara, the next one's yours, I believe, also 7B.
All right, Mayor and Council, this is the Steiger Lake Lane Improvement Project, and it is on the agenda tonight specifically relating to calling a public hearing for the fact that we're assessing the project. So because we're proposing to assess part of the costs, we do need to have a public improvement hearing. And so the purpose of tonight's agenda item is to simply approve the feasibility report and order the public hearing. But I wanted to take an opportunity to chat a bit with the council about where we're at and maybe get a little bit of feedback on something that staff's been contemplating. So by way of reminder, the purpose of this project when we started it many months ago was to complete what we're referring to as phase 3 of downtown improvements. So the first part of downtown, those phase 1 improvements occurred back in 2003 when Rose Street and Steiger Lake Lane and the western portion of Tower Boulevard, the Vic House parking lot, and the alley was all reconstructed. That work happened back in 2003. Then in 2009, phase 2 was completed, which consisted of Tower Boulevard next to what was the grocery store, and then also Quamaclit from Highway 5 down to Steiger Lake Lane. So in all of downtown, what remains for reconstruction is Steiger Lake Lane from City Hall here out to Highway 5, Steiger Lake Lane from the bridge out to Highway 5 going in the westerly direction. And then Commercial Boulevard does have concrete curb and gutter in it, so it's different than these other roads. This one was built much more recently than the rest of the roads in the neighborhood. So the intent was reconstruction of substandard streets. This road does not meet the city standards, both from a roadway section perspective as well as width. It's a 24-foot wide road with gravel shoulders, and there's virtually not much of a stormwater management system in place to convey water along the roadway. So from a street perspective, it certainly is in need of reconstruction at some point in time. The other elements of the project were pedestrian connectivity, so providing some additional pedestrian connectivity from Enki back to downtown, aesthetic connectivity so that we had the same visual features throughout this next portion of downtown, and then certainly to provide additional parking. So the project as it was presented to the city council at the end of the preliminary design phase provides for about, I think it's 68 additional parking stalls. But the other element related to the parking discussion was that there seems to be some energy around coming up with a central parking solution in the Vic House area. There's been conversations about the possibility of constructing a deck behind the Vic House area, and this parking lot itself has about 42 parking stalls in it. So if you were to construct a deck in this location, you'd lose 42 parking stalls during the construction. So if we are going to pursue that, we do need to have additional capacity in downtown before we would take that out. So those were the drivers when we came into the project. The scope, we're about complete with the design. So the plans are nearly complete. We've reviewed 90% plans. The consultant's going through the permitting process. The project remains unchanged from that perspective from what the city council saw when you authorized final design. So parking includes adding 68 stalls, street and storm sewer reconstruction, stormwater treatment. This project does have different stormwater treatment requirements than the previous two phases of downtown because the rules have changed. So the treatment aspect of this project is quite a bit more money than had occurred in the previous two phases. The consultant did recommend for stormwater treatment that we construct an underground treatment system in the middle of the road. We actually have the room to do that, and that proved to be the most cost-effective of the options that were available to us, so that is included in the scope. Sidewalk installation on the south side of the roadway along with the full streetscape package that you see in the existing downtown. So lighting, landscaping, pavers, tree grates, essentially carrying that similar aesthetic to what we see in the existing downtown through the remainder of the roadway. If you recall, we didn't propose completing the streetscape improvements on the north side of the road because these parcels all have redevelopment potential, so we didn't want to predispose where curb cuts might be or put sidewalk and landscaping in place that would potentially need to get ripped up when somebody came in to do a project. So we would envision those types of streetscape improvements happening at the time of redevelopment of those parcels, similar to how the streetscape was finished for the Victoria Flats project. So through this process, through the design process, we've computed, updated, final estimated costs. We're now sitting at $2.4 million. I think last time I presented it, we were at $2.5 million. We've spent a lot of time working on the assessments, which I'm going to talk about a bit, since that's really the primary purpose of what I'm looking for council action. But before I do so, I want to note some of the feedback that I've been getting along the way from downtown business owners as it relates to the project as a whole. So we have a $2.4 million project, and as it's conceived today, we'd be proposing to use $1.2 million of the TIF that's coming from the Victoria Flats project to help finance this project. So that's essentially 100% of the TIF that's available to the city from that project would be going to this project. And the concern that I've heard from downtown property owners is if we take all that TIF to build parking all the way down this roadway, there's not any money available to do anything in a central part of the city where they feel the parking demand is greater. So we took a look at the project scope to determine if there was any ways to potentially phase the improvements so that we weren't spending all of the money that was available from that project on this project. So we came up with two different options that the city could consider to reduce the overall project costs. The first one would be to defer construction of the streetscape package. So you would build the roadway improvements, the parking improvements, and the stormwater management improvements, but you wouldn't construct the sidewalk, the pavers, the tree grates, the lighting. Essentially, the area behind the curb would be just graded so that it would at least be a flat area that in the future, when the city decided they wanted to construct those improvements, we could do that at a greater point in time. In the meantime, you'd at least have a grassy area that, if somebody preferred to not walk down the middle of the street or go up to the trail, they could walk along that boulevard area. We don't have detailed estimates yet on these options, but it looks like that would potentially save about $500,000 in project cost. So that would be $500,000 less in TIF funds that would need to be used for this project that then could remain available for pursuit of some other downtown central parking project. The other option we're looking at is when you look at, so City Hall's all the way over here, Enki is this parcel right here. This is the city's wetland and stormwater treatment area. This parking down on this end is quite a ways away from anybody who necessarily needs it today. Enki certainly has adequate parking. The water sports building doesn't have any real parking demand that they aren't meeting in their current parking lot, although that parcel is for sale, I'll note. But we looked at the way the plans are drawn up, the way the grades are, where the high points, the low points are, and we could look at cutting the project somewhere through here and really shortening this first project up to be just completing this portion of the work. So that would provide for an additional 25 parking stalls in the area of the library and City Hall. It would provide a sidewalk connection to Enki, so you would still have some of that connectivity coming through. And then the city could contemplate doing this, what would then be a fourth phase of a downtown improvement project at some point in the future. This isn't anything that we're asking the council for specific action on, but I did wanted to lay that out, that that's something that staff is contemplating given the feedback that we've heard. That certainly will be looking for some council feedback on that topic. But before we go there, I'd like to walk through where we are with the assessments and then answer any questions that everyone might have at the end. So the assessments for this project were complicated. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sorry. I think initially you said that eliminating the streetscape would pull about $500,000 out of that 2.4 estimated. Did that $500,000 also include eliminating the parking from sort of Enki on east, or is that an additional savings?
So the $500,000 is eliminating the streetscape from City Hall all the way to Highway 5. The second option would be to not touch the street from Enki's westerly driveway all the way to Highway 5. So we'd be doing less than half of the 2.4. So our consultant is providing me an estimate for what that project cost would be. It's going to be less than half.
So the savings is going to be substantially more with option 2.
Correct.
But that does include all the streetscape, the sidewalk, everything else.
Correct. So you would be building you'd be building the full meal deal from City Hall up to Enki with the sidewalks and everything.
If I understand you right, how hard would it be to cut it where the trail connection is?
This is a high point in the road, so to whatever extent we go further this direction, the stormwater management becomes more complicated.
Oh, got it.
So this was the natural place to make that break. I certainly could ask the consultant to take a look at what the consequences might be if we tried to get to that trail connection.
What's the savings TIF on option 2?
So what's funding the TIF would be, what the TIF funds are being used for is the parking,
So you would spend all of the TIF.
No, I'm imagining it'll be, my guess is that same
$500,000.
half, potentially.
600,000.
So is that just eligible project costs that are eligible for TIF funding would be reduced by half also?
Correct. Or a little more than half.
Okay. And if, thinking about the trail connection piece, because that's at the easterly end of the Yankee property, have we contemplated, and I don't know how full their parking lot gets these days, I know they've done a nice job of bringing tenants into that building, but have we contemplated potentially leasing some of the existing parking lot at Yankee and signing it as public parking to help create trail, a place for trail traffic to park without having a permanent expense at this point?
To my knowledge, that conversation hasn't occurred. That would have been the community development director or city manager having that dialogue, but I don't recall ever hearing that contemplated, and Ann hasn't either, so that's not a conversation that's been started yet.
I guess I'll ask the question of the rest of the council. Is that something we think could be a part of this solution on a temporary basis?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's something to be looked at.
If we were to do the whole project, the 2.4 million, and we use 1.2 million on the TIF, aren't we still short 800 to $1 million?
Yeah, so the project would be, certainly, when we get to the point where we would be authorizing bidding, we would be giving you a fairly detailed presentation on what that financing plan looks like. The finance director has started that process with our bond consultant of figuring out what we're using. But typically it would be a combination of, so we can use sewer enterprise funds and water enterprise funds for the sanitary sewer and water main costs. And then you would sum up the total of what's left here. You'd have the TIF funds, the assessment revenue, and then the amount that's left typically would come from your general tax levy.
Just in general, I'm concerned with the entire scope of the project, or the full scope of the project, that, it kind of comes across to me as a parking lot to nowhere right now. It'd be a beautiful addition, but maybe it would spur development down there. But that's a bet, and we're betting with taxpayer money, and that's not a bet I'm willing to take. So I'm definitely interested in ways to shorten the scope of this. And my preference is actually, if we're going to provide a solution for parking, then let's provide a solution and do something in combination with the central core.
So maybe kind of piggybacking on that theme, I'm interested to hear some of the other feedback that has been gained from some of the business owners, and I also would distinguish between business owners and building owners or property owners. They may be two different entities. And my comment last time we had this conversation was that this is a project to attract new development that will bring its own parking requirements. And what I hear from the existing business owners and building owners who are paying taxes now and have been assessed for some of this parking already in years past is they don't have enough. So I'm also concerned that we're spending money to attract, when we have new businesses, when we haven't taken care of the ones that we have that are currently paying taxes. I guess that's my main comment at this point.
Well, at this point, we're not going to make any decisions tonight. I think the what Kara's proposed as giving us additional options for the council to consider is probably the correct steps at this point.
Just one more comment. The last time we looked at this, we had really pretty pictures of a nice plaza in front of Vic's and Victoria House, and then parallel parking on that north side. How does that? When are we going to switch that parallel parking, regardless of?
So included in the plans, the city council had authorized including the conversion of the angle parking to parallel parking on a permanent basis. So that is incorporated in the design right now. So that's built into the 2.4 million, and that's just to do, I don't like that map. That is just to do the part between Steiger Lake Lane and Randy's Way. So converting that to a permanent one-way with parallel parking on this side of the street. For now, this section would remain a two-way condition. We would remove the barricade that's there, open it back up for two-way traffic. The pretty pictures of the plaza would require a future additional funding plan to figure out how to pay for that. But we certainly need this part open for two-way traffic during the closure of this road to keep traffic moving around this area for deliveries and whatnot. So the recommendation when we completed preliminary design would be that that would occur, at some point in the future, to be determined.
Going back to the two options, if we put the parking in option 2, we need lighting. So to me, option 1 is not as viable because you wouldn't want to build parking without lighting. That's what you're saying is you put the parking in the street in, but none of the amenities.
Yeah, staff did discuss it quite a bit internally between the two options. If the council were to ask us for a recommendation, our consensus seemed, and we don't have all the costs yet, but we seem to be leaning towards option 2, where we're building the full road up to a certain point for things like making sure there's lighting for people who'd be parking around there.
And sidewalk.
Somewhere for sidewalk to people to walk. If we talked about this at previous meetings, but we did put a Band-Aid. We put a big Band-Aid over that road back in 2011. The Band-Aid seems to be holding. So, you'd maybe have 3, 4, 5 years before that road would start to deteriorate to the point where this starts to become, really problematic to not have it be completed. But by then there might have been additional redevelopment around the corridor. You might have another TIF district. You might have another funding opportunity for this next phase, or you would just need to put another Band-Aid over the road until such time as you could afford to do that part. But, it's not ideal to split a corridor in half in terms of a pavement management perspective. Then you'll have, one part of the road 5 years newer than the other part of the road. But we felt that having the sidewalk and the lighting in place, if you were going to put that parking in, made a lot of sense.
So can you flip to the slide with the breakdown of project costs? Yeah, that one. So I understand that this is the road plus primarily southern side improvements. If we waited to do some or all of this project until further development happened down there, what percentage of this would you expect to be absorbed by the development and the developers as opposed to being a city expense and taxpayer expense?
It's typically been negotiated based on the circumstances for whatever project's coming along. So
Can you give us a range, an idea? Is it?
Oh, potentially all.
Right. Do you own land? Are you selling land? We owned that property. I don't even remember, Ben would remember what that deal all ended up being in terms of what we had into it compared to what they have into it. But they ended up constructing all the parking, all the streetscape, the lighting,
Right.
all of those features as part of their costs for the deal.
Doug, back in late last year, we had discussed putting together a parking workshop. I think I'd really like to get that pushed forward so we can get a handle on how we're going to pay for some of this parking.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, we're scheduled to do that April
April 9th.
9th.
So the intent would be that we'll at least have had that workshop before you're having to actually take action on this project. If you go to the project schedule for whatever version of a project we're building, whoops, I have it later. What we're asking for tonight is to accept the feasibility report and call for a public improvement hearing. On April 9th, we would hold that public improvement hearing. That would be the night we'd be asking the council to order advertisement for bids and call for a final assessment hearing. But you wouldn't actually be holding the assessment hearing or accepting bids and awarding a contract till May 28th. So we do have some time to continue to dialogue about the parking issue, but we wanted to try to get that parking workshop scheduled as soon as we could in this process.
And regardless of which option we choose, whether it's the whole street or the part of the street or 1/4 of the street, the assessments will still hold, correct?
Correct. It'll just vary who's included in the assessment. So the assessments are tied to the street and storm sewer costs only. We aren't assessing for parking. We aren't assessing for pretty trees and lighting. The purpose of the assessment relates to the street and storm sewer improvements.
Okay.
And so who would be included in a final assessment will vary if we reduce the length of the project. We certainly aren't going to be assessing the water sports building if we're not improving the street adjacent to their building.
I understand in terms of assessments, there's a legal limit with respect to the value of the improvements or the added value to the adjoining properties. So that obviously becomes important with respect to development itself. I'm curious if we have those pretty pictures that if we had a community development director or planner in much the same way we did on the west side, and we create that vision of here's what it will be, going forward, so that we can help use that to support property owners that may be talking to developers or looking to attract new owners in development.
Yeah, definitely. We did go ahead and have our consultant create this YouTube video that I won't make us watch here, but this links here that provides a flyover of what the corridor would look like if the construction were to be completed. Ben did feel it was pretty effective in conveying what that would look like, since it's a 3D version versus just even a stills. But certainly HKGI, our planning consultant, could help us prepare any of those types of materials if we chose to go that route. In terms of the special assessments, since that is what we're asking you to act on tonight, I should spend a few moments talking about where we landed in the feasibility study for recommended assessment amounts. This is a very different situation than we've been in with any of our previous projects. When it came time to compute preliminary assessment amounts for the project, the first thing that we did was look to what our assessment policy is and look to what the previous 2 phases of downtown improvements, how those were assessed to the benefiting property owners. The city's assessment policy does allow for 100% of the cost to be assessed to the adjacent property owners for the street and storm sewer improvements in this downtown district. The previous council's felt that the 100% wouldn't be defensible in terms of meeting the state statute for not exceeding the increased value of the property. So they elected to assess 75% of the project costs. But when I went and applied that similar policy here, what I was finding is that the numbers just seemed really disproportionately high. And the reason for that is just the nature of the parcels in this part of downtown compared to the other part of downtown. So each of these red squares is a parcel, and if we're assessing on a front foot basis, it's hard to consider them the same. When you have, this is a multifamily apartment condo situation. Both of these are multifamily properties. This is the Enke property, a big giant commercial retail property with a whole lot of depth, but also frontage on 3 different roads. Here you have the Kelly Green parcel that has some depth to it, but then you have the one next to it which has more street frontage but has no depth to it. So what's the real redevelopment potential associated with it? Public Works site is super odd because it's bifurcated by property that we don't have legal access across. And then the water sports building is up on this end with this real narrow section here that are they really benefiting from the roadway? So when I went through and prepared the preliminary assessments using the assessment policy, these were the amounts we were coming up with. And I became concerned that we would be not in compliance with state statute. So I reached out to Sherry Brum of Patchen, Messner, Dodd, and Brum, who has done special benefit analysis for the city, really dating back to the first phase of downtown improvements to help us determine whether our assessment policy is appropriate for a particular project. So she completed special benefit analysis that looks at things like the footage, the depth, and then the type of property it is. So is it multifamily or is it the type of parcels that these all are? And she provided us with a range of assessment amounts. And so the feasibility study is written with a recommendation that the proposed assessments be based on the lowest of the amounts listed above. And if you recall, when you get to a final assessment hearing, the property owners have the right to appeal the assessment to district court. So if we end up in a circumstance like that on this case, you would want to be in a defensible position, which is why we're recommending that you would go with the lowest of all of these amounts that you see listed here.
Which totals to what?
217.
I didn't grab that number. That sounds, oh, I have it in the report. $256,500 on the using the low number.
How does
That's
that
if we
work
include
for
the
the?
cities, correct? I'm sorry.
Correct. That does
Same
include
question.
city property.
So how does that work for city property? We just pay that out of general fund or into the project? Becomes part of a bonded amount or what?
Yeah, for doing special assessment bonds, you need to have a minimum of 20% of the project assessed. So in this case, we'd need to use the city parcels to get to that 20% number. So, and then we would consider either prepaying those up front with some kind of fund transfer, or we would assess ourselves over time. So we have a couple of options for that.
So what we're looking for tonight is you were provided a copy of a feasibility report that just documents in accordance with state statute what the proposed improvements are and the proposed assessment amounts for the purposes of the special assessments. So I understand that this report contemplates the full project, but what would happen is if we leave here and we start to get direction that the council's interested in reducing the scope of the project, after we hold the public improvement hearing, you would be directing me to revise this report to just reflect the portion of the project that you're interested in building. If we waited a month, we're going to lose a whole nother month in the process, and it would prevent you from really being able to do the project this year because of the notification requirements associated with these different hearings. But
Do you have to do another hearing? If we change the scope of the project?
only if we expanded it. So if you decided to start including additional areas, then and additional properties to be assessed, then you would have to do another hearing. But because you would be doing less than, they're not going to mind if you decide to not assess them.
So the lady you consulted with, is she a law firm that specializes in assessments and evaluating them?
Appraiser.
Oh, she's an appraiser?
Yeah, appraisal firm. I am thinking of the letters after her name to see whether she's an actual appraiser, but she's who we used for the Wasserman Trunk utility extension appraisals when that went through condemnation.
So, can you elaborate any more on the feedback that you have been getting?
I haven't been getting a tremendous amount of feedback. Our primary outreach has recently been to these property owners who are being assessed to make sure they understand the process. A couple of them are concerned about the dollar amounts, so they're reviewing this information and evaluating if they're going to finance it. So they are able to finance this over a 15-year period with interest, so deciding if they would finance it themselves or if they would end up adding it to their property taxes. But through the courses of some of those discussions with a couple of those property owners, some other downtown property owners, I did have an opportunity to attend the VBA meeting this week to give them all an update. That's just the preliminary feedback that I've been getting, and it's pretty similar to what we heard when we had the downtown parking meeting here at City Hall. It's just the notion that the people who are looking for additional parking around this part of the city being concerned that if we're using all the funds to build out all the way down here, there won't be any funding left to do anything in the central area. It really wasn't until we got through the design that I was surprised that we were going to be able to find a good phasing point. Ben had asked me about that back at the preliminary design phase, and until you really get that stormwater all figured out, it's hard to figure out how you would cut a road in half and only build part of it at the time. And so once we got through the design, it just seemed like something to at least bring up as an idea for staff and the city council to think about.
So if we approve this, we can narrow the scope without having to reschedule, have more public hearings. I'd like to also hear from the city attorney, not tonight because he needs time to look at this, but changing this assessment, I want to make sure that we're not opening ourselves up, that we give special consideration to one group. If we're following the state statutes and this is in line with the policy and it's what we need to do to comply, fine, but I think we should hear from more than just an appraiser to make sure that there's no other issues that we're missing here. So,
and I should note I have consulted with the city attorney along the way on this process, so he'll be prepared to speak to that for you when he's here.
Yeah, I think because time is of the essence, I would like to approve this hearing, public hearing.
A couple questions here still. At the point where we talked about this last, the completed Rose Street parking was just coming online. We've got some of the Victoria Flats parking. I think the on-street portion is now pretty much 100% usable, and maybe even to some degree the parking on the east side.
Correct. Staff is now all parking over there.
So I guess my question is, have we done a survey of business and building owners and or an audit of available parking spots since that capacity has gone live to understand if some of the concerns have been allayed by that, or?
I think it's still too soon to tell because the concerns that I'm hearing are when the flats building is fully occupied. So we're not at full occupancy yet.
Do you know where we're at today?
I know we had just released nearly the whole building, but we weren't there yet. But they weren't all leased yet. So they're kind of working their way from top down.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's correct. My guess is that they're less than half full of building, but still proceeding.
They're moving towards full, but
When is their parking going to be fully available to the city, to the public?
when they stop hanging things on the exterior of the
Well,
building.
haven't we heard when that's going to be?
The building official is the lead coordinator on that project, and I just haven't had an opportunity to ask him in the last week or two where that project is at, but that's certainly information we can get from Scott.
Because there's still parking equipment in front of the building, and that's what, 5 or 6 spots right there?
Yeah.
So they're not available, and they could be, the minute they don't put a machine there.
Mr. Mayor, we had been told that we would have it maybe a month ago, so we're still trying to get it, but obviously they're still hanging balconies and stuff with that big equipment. I'm a little scared to put my truck in there some days. They got that big stuff coming out of there, but I think they're getting there, but I'm not, we can check on what their current guess is, but it's behind what the last guess was.
Doug, do you know where the occupancy level is compared to the property owner's projections? Are they comfortable that things are moving okay, or what's the feeling? Do you know?
Last I talked to them, they're very comfortable with it. I think they're going to be a little bit behind what the original developers agreement called for timing wise, but they're very comfortable that they're able to. They have the demand. They just have to get the units ready. So they're okay on the demand.
So they're pacing it. It's not market demand.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Well, I would really like to see some sort of an audit, just assessment of what the real capacity situation is once we get further along. And also I had some conversations with some individuals and organizations, and I am under the impression that there was maybe an informal vote taken, and that virtually everybody operating a business within the core was in favor of core parking. And so I'm a little scratching my head as to how we got this far down the road, so to speak. On this side, if the key kind of stakeholders are thinking this isn't serving the needs.
We got there by council authorization.
Well, but our authorization was based on a recommendation, and the recommendation is what I'm interested in.
This is based on the fact that we were supposed to provide parking while construction of a deck took place.
It really, obviously, as the engineer, I'm just taking direction from the council in terms of what I'm supposed to work on. So I'm going to attempt to speak for the previous city manager and community development director. But it comes back to the bullet points on this notion and feeling pretty strongly that if what I recall them describing to the businesses and to the city council is that we need both. We need the phase 3 improvements completed, and we need a downtown central parking deck type solution. And if we're going to build something like that, we're going to take out 42 stalls during construction. We need to have more overall capacity in order to do it. So they viewed it as a phased approach where we would do this project first, followed by something in the downtown core area. That's my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
So when you have the hearing, you talk the assessments with the property owners. Are you going to be talking in terms of lower assessments or a range, or what are you?
The feasibility study recommends that the assessments be the lowest of the amounts you see on this page. So if the city council approves the feasibility study, the notice that gets sent to 1400 Steger Lake Lane is going to be for an assessment of $23,000. So that's the way the report is written. So if the council approves the report as drafted, we will be sending notice with a specific dollar amount that is the lowest of the amounts you see listed for each parcel.
And that amount can't change then?
No, it can change, and if we decide to, it'll have language that if we decide to reduce the scope, then that will change lower.
If we reduce the scope, we aren't proposing to assess for any of the streetscape amenities. So if we eliminate the sidewalk,
I see what you're saying.
what would happen though is the water sports building, for example, wouldn't
not
be
get
assessed.
Thank
So
you.
they wouldn't, we would go through the public hearing, we'd say, look, we're not doing that part of the project, so you can
Got it. Thank you.
not think about this again.
So I want to make sure before we vote on this, the city attorney has looked at this and said this is appropriate?
Yes. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, Karen, wouldn't it be safer to do the higher number in the lower thing? Because you can always go down, but I'm worried about going up.
So because the special benefit analysis contemplates the type of improvement and the type of project, we wouldn't be in a situation where we are like on a street project where we're assessing on a 50% basis. This 23,000 is the number, and there wouldn't be a scenario where I would be recommending a higher amount.
Why are there two numbers here then?
Because our consultant provided a range, so if the city council felt that you wanted to go with the higher amount, you certainly could choose to, but that's not what I'm recommending.
What I heard as a part of a recommendation was that these can be appealed to district court, and from a position standpoint, it's better to be at the low end if they are appealed.
Absolutely, but I just wasn't sure if there might possibly be some recommendation to use the higher numbers coming from you, but you're saying not.
Correct.
Okay.
And the range is pretty tight on these, so it's not, if we're talking about, just looking at 1400 Steger Lane, risking legal action over $1,500, I think that's a poor.
Yeah.
We're expecting everyone, yourself, the attorney, the people you consulted with, to give us your best opinion.
Correct.
And you are.
What Councilmember Striegel just noted is exactly the analysis that I went through. I don't think it's worth, with how tight that cost differential is, it's not worth the risk. If they appeal to district court, you'd be better off being in the lower position.
And Mr. Mayor, that's our process will be that we'll see what the appeals are before we actually order the project, so we know what kind of potential problem we have with assessments.
Correct. That is our recommendation for this project. So for our residential street projects, we don't do the final assessment hearing until after the construction is complete. We have a pretty good handle on our methodology. We've been through special benefit analysis. We've had those assessments appealed to district court in the past, and we've been successful in defending our policy. So we're fairly low risk on those projects for appeal. But we have in the state statute, the policy, and we have done it on particular projects. It does provide you the opportunity to hold the final assessment hearing before you award a contract. So our recommendation coming out of April 9th would be to call for the final assessment hearing to be held May 28th, so that you know that night before you award a contract, if, let's say, all the property owners are going to appeal the assessment, then you're potentially at risk of not having that funding. The council may decide we're not doing the project given the number of appeals. You at least have all that information to make that decision at that time then.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, and in addition, if only one parcel appeals it, you'll know that you have a limited liability for the losing in court on the appeal. So you'll know exactly what your worst case is.
I would recommend providing that flyby video to all the property owners so that they understand kind of what it will do for them as frontage owners relative to the value of their land and their ability to market it for redevelopment. Yeah, that's all.
So I'm trying to run some of these numbers in my head quickly as I'm sitting here hearing this. I was shown numbers before, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the total assessment could have been, under the old policy, 800,000. Now this assessment with the lower amount is for sake of argument, 240, right? So we're down to what, 20, for sake of argument, we'll say 25%. Does that cause problems where we go to other parts of the city and we've assessed at 50% with homeowners, right? And here we're only doing 25%. Is it cause legal issues as far as these people getting, or these landowners getting preferential treatment in comparison? Or is it because this is such a unique situation with unique properties, like, for example, just like the water sports where you said it's very narrow, they have a long frontage, but no usable land, so to speak of. So I want to make sure that before we ask the council for action on this, if those numbers are right and we're assessing these properties at a far lower percentage, does that cause problems for other property owners who have been assessed at a higher percentage? And maybe it's better for the city attorney to weigh in on this just briefly.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that's a question. I think you asked that we want to run past the city attorney before we go forward, but it's a great question, and one of the first questions I asked on it too. But we are very concerned about that. But we think the advice we have so far is that no, because of particular aspects of this property, we can vary from the policy that you normally do. It's not something you want. Normally, you don't want it. You want to always be consistent forever, so nobody ever comes back and says, "Hey, how you treated these people differently." But in this case, we think we have a very valid case for having very different property, and we need to come up with a different assessment approach, or else it's not a viable project to assess these properties at your normal level. So we think so, but we will have that coming from the city attorney.
Do you feel comfortable weighing in?
I do. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I agree. I'll echo those comments. It sounds like City Attorney Vos has reviewed this, but the bottom line is that legally the city can't assess a property for more than the special benefit that the property will receive. Of course, property is unique. All parcels are different from other parcels. In this case, it's unique enough to the point where they're going to be assessed at about 25%, and we can't go beyond that.
And that's because of the limitations in the state statute?
Exactly.
Okay.
They would have a legal basis to challenge that, and there would be serious issues if the city took that approach.
So you're comfortable with this, and Doug, you are too?
I am.
All right. So,
And we will certainly ask the city attorney to re-echo that, but from what we know today, yes.
All right. Thank you.
My last comment or request, I guess, related to this is that when the public hearing is called and/or any meetings related to kind of assessing the sentiment of the businesses and property owners, that we include the entire kind of central business district in the notification process. And we frequently hear from people that the impact is felt well beyond the 500 or 600 feet by statute that we're required to notify. And I think this is, a big enough deal that we need to really heed that and expand it out.
Yeah, I do just want to note that when it comes to special assessments, I do hold separate meetings with just the people who are being assessed for a project, because the effect the project is having on them and their input and their need to understand their rights and their process is very different than somebody who lives or has a business away from it. What I found is if you open that meeting up to too broad of a audience, the people who really need to understand that end up sort of getting lost.
Okay.
So we haven't done another round of public input. That maybe if there's head nods on the council, maybe I should try to work into the schedule a downtown business kind of meeting to gauge some of that feedback.
Or a workshop.
I think if you had such a meeting, with this project looming, we need to really fully understand the Victoria Flats parking. When it's going to be available, and the businesses haven't felt it yet. They lost that parking lot for, a year and a half? They haven't got it back yet. So, it's very important that we get that thing operating and the businesses know that there's spaces over there and they tell their customers. And that hasn't happened. So if you'd ever have a meeting, you got to have this parking story straight.
Yeah, so I can speak with the city manager and interim community development director and parking planning consultant to figure out when might be a good time to have such a meeting.
So you got a motion here. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion, but I'm going to do it with the caveat that I am not in favor of this project as it currently stands. I'm in favor of moving this forward to expedite what the final solution will be. This is a piece of the puzzle. We still haven't seen the whole picture to the puzzle. I move we approve a resolution receiving and accepting the feasibility report and calling for a hearing on Steger Lake Lane Street and parking improvements.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passed unanimously. That was aye, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, Kara, next item, 7C, Steiger Lake Lane parking improvements, overhead lines.
Mayor and
Or
council,
utilities,
I'm
yep.
still here talking about things. So associated with the Steiger Lake Lane Improvement Project, the reconstruction of that street does facilitate a necessity to relocate the overhead power lines that are along the corridor. If you recall, through our right-of-way ordinance, we can mandate that the utilities relocate to accommodate our improvements to a corridor. And so that process has been activated. The different utility companies are working with our design consultant to figure out where they can move to. But in the case of downtown and the narrowness of the corridor, we don't want those power lines to remain overhead. We want them to be buried. So when we did the first phase of downtown improvements, we buried a whole bunch of overhead power lines. Now we're on to this phase, looking at burying overhead power lines. We'll be recommending that the overhead power lines along the west leg of Steger Lake Lane get looked at for burying when it comes time to do that road improvement project. But in your packet, you have a letter and statement of work that's been provided by Xcel Energy associated with burying the overhead power lines. As a reminder, while we can make them move, we can't make them go underground. So the city is obligated to pay the cost difference between their relocation costs from overhead to overhead. We have to pay the part to bury. We spent many a time vetting through that when they were putting in the new distribution lines throughout the city, when we put the franchise fee in place that has funding now available to bury. So the estimated costs are $286,000. We do recommend, staff does recommend that the city council proceed with this. Regardless of what the exact timing of and scope of roadway improvements, the lines do need to get relocated and buried out of the way. So the estimated cost is $286,000. We have money available from the bonds that were issued in 2016 associated with the initial overhead underground installation by Xcel for all the distribution lines, and that bond is being repaid from franchise fees placed on all of the property owners. With that, I'll take questions, or this is what we're looking for.
Council, questions, comments?
It's a kind of a semi-random but related thought related to payment or to the debt service. So I understand after President Trump's tax reform went through that power companies are now going to have more money than they're legally allowed to spend because of the tax reduction. And so as our city paid electric bills go down due to that, and I believe that's in the works now, is that some money that we could earmark to set aside to pay for this kind of thing?
Well, I guess we could. I haven't heard of that particular provision in the Tax Act, but we could.
It's not specific to any particular industry, but there are a lot of, as industries are seeing a reduction in their tax burden, they're either giving it to employees or whatever, but in the case of a publicly regulated utility, their rates that they have to justify to the PUC are based on their costs of operation, and with taxes, that cost of operation is now going down. I don't know how much we spend on electricity as a city and how much benefit that will be, but I think if there is some spin-off benefit there, this would be a good place to spend it.
Certainly, we could do that.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
Is this cost included in our current franchise fee, or will the fee have to go up to handle this?
The cost for this particular project would be paid from remaining bond proceeds.
Okay.
And then after this project, we will still have remaining bond proceeds of, I calculated about $650,000. So we'll likely be coming back with an additional undergrounding project.
We just got the final bill from the 2016 project, and the costs came in significantly under what they had initially estimated to the city.
So could we, heaven forbid, lower the franchise fee and not tax our citizens as much?
We could. What we could do is take the bond proceeds and put them into the debt service fund, which would lower the amount needed for the franchise fee. However, when the franchise fee was set up, the purpose was to do the initial undergrounding project and then look at other undergrounding projects that were out there. So it would be a council decision of whether they would want to try and tackle some of the additional undergrounding projects that are out there, or do them.
Well, I'd like to understand what the other projects are, but my initial reaction is let's cut the franchise fee and not tax people.
Yeah,
we don't have to.
Agreed, but not without knowing
Right.
those other projects are and what that would look like.
Yeah, we started talking about what internally identifying where we still have overhead power lines, where an example that came to mind for me was Smithtown Road. At the time we reconstructed that road, all those neighbors up there and the neighbors up in Bay Cliff were all asking to have those lines buried, and we had no means to fund them. So it's really kind of pulling a map out and identifying where those situations are, and then bringing that forward to the council to contemplate.
So can we get a short summary overview of potential projects, potential funding sources, so that we can look at that? Because I'd also like to cut back on that franchise fee if, in fact, there aren't projects that we really need to do. With the understanding, though, I've heard that there's a lot of electrical problems up in northern Victoria because of the lines. I think the council needs to consider that before we cut the fee and take away a funding source to fix that problem.
We will do that.
All right, council, other comments, questions?
Just to be clear, that 286 is net of the cost of relocating it above ground?
Correct.
That's all for me.
Okay, I move we authorize the interim city manager to sign the statement of work with Xcel Energy. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passed unanimously. Okay, the next item, agenda sending policy. Doug?
Mr. Mayor, the mayor and council discussed setting up a policy of how we put stuff on the agenda, how that happens, who has the authority. And the council looked at a draft of ideas that I had and came up with ideas of what the policy should look like. And I took those and tried to come up with what I thought was somewhat of a composite of those, and I've given you a copy of my recommendation tonight. Are we able to put that up on the board? Yeah.
Okay.
So these are what I, looking at everybody's but you certainly may want to massage them and put some different ideas in there.
I think this solves the purpose that I was shooting for. It places some guidelines, some rules as far as how we manage the agenda. I'd like to go forward with what was recommended by the city manager. Council, other
So
comments?
I'd like to see it posted up here, what was recommended by the city manager.
This is it. This is it.
Okay, this is the final one?
Right.
I think there's one item that I would prefer to have added, and that is that this does not supersede Robert's Rules of Order.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's not a bad idea to add that to that. I heard that after I put this together, but
The other comments?
I think it's reasonable.
I'm fine with it.
I'm good.
Councilmember Striegel?
That's fine.
So
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve this with the addition of item 6, that items 1 through 5 do not supersede Robert's Rules of Order.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That passes unanimously with the modification. Okay, Doug, reports.
Mr. Mayor, I received late Thursday the opinion from the Attorney General on the open meeting law, and I will email that to the council tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
It's big news.
All right.
I'm sorry I didn't get that out. We got it after the agenda packet went out, and I was not able to get it to you. But
And you weren't here Friday, so anything from the city attorney?
I have nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Crowley?
Nothing.
Councilmember Striegel?
No, nothing.
Councilmember Vogt?
Nothing.
No report.
I have no report. I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
Just drop.